According to the planning and zoning meeting with the city of Norwalk on June 24th, 2026 at 6 p.m. We'll begin by calling this meeting's order. Steve, do you mind calling the roll? Start. Before you do, Harvey or John, since I can see your video, or can you give me a thumbs up that you can hear me? Excellent. Okay, good. Want to make sure the audio is coming through. Folks in the audience, can you hear me as well? Excellent. Great. Okay, please go ahead, Steve.
So I'll start with the folks. Mr. Hubers,
Here.
Ms. Wells,
Here.
I'm turning up the audio for us.
I don't have access to that in this room.
Okay.
and Mr. Jones.
Here.
And starting down here, Mr. Huston. Mr. Schulman here. Mr. Dyson.
Here.
Ms. Redson and Ms. Lancaster.
Here.
As well as.
Here. I'll note for our commissioners that are online, unfortunately, we're having some audio issues where it's challenging to hear you. So when you do have a question, please raise your hand and I'll ask you to speak as loud as you can. So hopefully we can hear you, and I'll do my best to repeat the question for those that are in the room if I can hear you. So my apologies, and hopefully we can figure out the AV issue.
Yeah, thank you. Just for the record, like, it is kind of possible to hear you, but it is strangely muffled.
Simon, I think it might all be coming through your computer.
Yeah, because this isn't hooked up to the speaker system in here.
Do you have a
I just used whatever IT provided me when they came down. They set up and then I just assisted them. I did the iPads.
challenging it would be for us to say to council chambers or something so that Harvey and John can ask questions?
Well, that would be going upstairs, which I do have access to, but it would probably take me about half hour to set up. Actually, wait, no. If you just bring your iPads with you, I mean, it would be a little bit, and everyone could follow, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we can hear it online, that's the thing.
So like, I could make a call to somebody for a while.
Up to your.
Yeah, well. I would suggest maybe if you're gonna hold off questions for now, let them work the presentation, and that way we can hopefully solve the audio problem in the interim, and then questions can field in as we need.
Okay, that makes sense.
Chapin, could you do me a favor? Could you just ask him to speak one more time? I just want to see if one thing I did might have affected anything.
Hermie, do you mind speaking one more time to see if?
Hello, test 1, 2, 3.
Here, I'm here.
So do you have this switch over?
Yeah. So you guys have to stay muted because the way IT set it up is they set up the microphones so we won't get feedback from everybody's devices in the room.
I'm sorry, I don't know who's speaking, but whoever is speaking that's not Chapin, you are coming in very clearly, and Chapin is not coming in clearly, for what it's worth.
So what I would recommend is following Steve's advice, which Harvey, John, and Neil are okay with it. We'll move forward with the applicant's presentation. Can you hear us, Harvey? Okay, so we'll move forward with the applicant's presentation, and then we will ask for your questions at the end. Still resolve the audio issues by then. We'll figure out what the next steps are. But that way, we give IT some time to define how to enable audio for you guys in this room. All right, sorry for the technical difficulties. So this evening, all alternates are seated, both Jay and Doug. And we will move to our first public hearing. So our first public hearing this evening is 2026-41. Regulation map and special permits, Manresa Osprey LLC, Longshore Avenue, and 0 and 3 Manresa Island, District 5, Block 86, Lots 1 and 2, zoning regulation and map amendment to create special districts, Manresa Wilds, SD-MW, zoning district, and special permit application for a development park master plan public presentation. So before I ask the applicant to begin their presentation this evening, I'd like to describe the public hearing process. Tonight we'll begin the public hearing for the Manresa Island application. As you know, this is a sizable application with a map and regulation change along with a special permit. Given the scale, tonight we are going to focus the time on the applicant's presentation. That way we have a chance to hear all of their materials and understand their proposal. That's why the agenda indicates that tonight's is the public presentation phase. At our July 15th meeting, we will resume our hearing on Manresa Island, where the applicant may provide additional information before we open up public comment. At the July 15th meeting, we will invite members of the public to provide comment on the application. And between now and the 15th, we ask that you spend time to provide it and provide written comment by emailing either Steve Button or Brian Baker, whose email addresses are available on the Norwalk website and on tonight's agenda. We are planning on holding at least one additional hearing in July public comment at a time as needed. Once the public comment is complete and we've heard from everyone who wishes to speak, we will ask the applicant to respond to those comments. At that time, we'll move to deliberations and action on this matter. Just as a note on AV, I want to ask all commissioners and presenters this evening to speak into the microphone so that the members on Zoom can hear what's going on in the room, as there are some audio issues. With that, I'll turn to the applicant for their presentation. Who this evening is representing Manresa Osprey LLC.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Liz Stephanie. I represent the owner and the applicant, Manresa Osprey LLC, and I will be the initial presentation. You'll hear from others who I'll describe in just a minute. So, good evening, members of the commission. My name is Liz Stephanie. I'm a partner with Harmony Torrance and F in Tennessee, Stanford, Connecticut, and I am the applicant's attorney. The Manresa Osprey LLC owns the 120-acre Manresa Island property, and they are the applicant for you to see. I'm pleased to appear before you tonight to present text change application, the text amendment application, the map change, special permit application before you review, consideration and eventual action to transform Manresa Islands into Manresa Wilds, a privately owned public park. As you know, this endeavor has come to the city of Norwalk through the generosity and wisdom and vision of Austin and Allison Ford. Before I make my overall presentation, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Ford for passing comments at the applicant's speak.
Good evening. Just figured it makes sense for me to provide a little color commentary before we have a whole panel of experts, a long talk about all this. So just for clarity's sake, I'm Austin Ford. I like this food. And I was born in Norwalk. I built a business in Norwalk. I'm going to the Poland.
Bring your speaker that we can Bluetooth to.
In going through that, I realized just the incredible opportunity to serve the community and build something that connects people with nature, to connects people with each other, connects people with one. So, and really, in truly understanding the property, we realized that there's an opportunity to do something exceptional, considering this unique piece of land, and that much of the work that happens on Manresa Island can serve as an example for the region and the country as a whole in how to form and run these projects. With us tonight, we have an incredible team, the Manresa Island Corporation, which has Jess and Chris, Troy, and Josh, and Alex, and all these people who are equally passionate about what we're building, as well as Scape, who is a nationally recognized landscape architecture firm out of New York City, who's leading the design. And Big is also here as well, who's serving as the architect for how it transforms. In addition, there's also consultants and companies, right? One of the things that we have learned in doing so much research about the site and bringing this team together is that Manresa cannot wait. And I think that that's the thing that is easy to overlook. The ecosystem that exists on the site will not survive in the long term. And if you do not think, the ecosystem will collapse in 10 to 25 years. It's largely due to how it just all showed up one day when we stopped on the whole action. And so it's not really set up to be a true successional ecosystem, and it requires intervention in order to be stabilized and stay the beautiful thing that it is now. The same is true that, the building, you need to either keep it or get rid of it, but it cannot sit in its intermediary liminal state, as it only creates more risk for the environment. And there are various environmental sites which all better that remediate the problem. Manresa is not unique in that it is a power plant and seeking a new plant. And if you look all across the coast of Connecticut, there are multiple plants. And many of them have struggled or stalled at. And a lot of that is because they've become dependent upon resources either from the federal government or the state. And the availability of those resources can change with political winds one way or another. One thing that we're specifically doing that's different about Manresa is that we're not asking for money from more. We're not asking for money from the state. And we're not asking for money from the federal government. We've not gone back and asked Eversource or Energy to pay for any of the cleanup associated with the mess that they've been on the site. Manresa Wildfires funded entirely through private contribution. Allison and I are publicly committed to at least $410 million associated with that cleanup. And that's the price point that we look at just to get the site to a baseline. So it requires a real investment just to get this ecosystem in a new place. Allison and I fully expect to invest in addition to that, as well as other private donors as well. And to date, we spent approximately $50 million of that $410 million already. Manresa is much bigger than just Allison and myself. And we've engaged in over a year of community engagement, seeking feedback from the community. We've reached out to people of all different ages and abilities and capabilities to collect information. We've taken thousands of folks on tours, and we've done a tremendous amount of work archiving what is actually there, capturing the current state of the site, understanding the ecology, and all reaching out to every single piece of paper that was in the building. The community's feedback has brought about thousands of changes in the Meet Each Other project, and this master plan shows the incorporation of those changes. One of the things that I think is most telling is that if you actually look, there were ads taken out in the Norwalk Hour before the power plant was built of the Norwalk community seeking for this site to become a part, to make this land accessible to everybody in Norwalk. And so it's super motivating to be in a position where we can help build that. And this project, I believe, is really a chance to allow this land to find its most productive use. We put in lots of controls to ensure that the site is a fit for Norwalk today and can adjust and respond to the Norwalk of tomorrow. We plan to maintain 24/7 security on site, so we have access control as far as who can come to the site and when. We plan to have control parking, and we plan to make the site accessible over the water, and some of this to reduce vehicular traffic. Finally, this whole presentation is obviously seeking your approval to create a district. Currently, the site is zoned for single-family housing, which in all of our community feedback, nobody suggested that that's what we should put there. And so we think that it makes sense for us to make these zoning changes to align with what belongs on the site. And the plans that we presented, the totality of the zoning presentation talks about what may go on site, for the next 50 years, how long after I'm dead. And so there are lots of things in there that we have no intention of building, but would need to come back and ask for permission, but want to make sure that the future caretakers of Manresa Wilds are not locked out of continuing to make the site fit with Norwalk needs. And with that, I'll hand it back to Liz. Also, please ask lots of questions.
We sure will. Thanks. Just wanted to do a quick check with those who are online. Can I get a thumbs up, thumbs down if you can hear the room? Thumbs up if you can hear us. Thumbs down if you can't. Oh, no. Yeah, it sounds like the audio is not doing great on this.
Yeah, so in terms of that, they just have to speak into the microphone very closely, yeah.
Can I give a sample so that we can see if Harvey and team can hear better? Sure. 7.
Can the folks working the AV please mute when you're not when the room is speaking? There was a little crosstalk. I could make out most of the rest of it.
Yeah, so basically he's hearing like crosstalk from you guys from your microphones if you were just saying something to each other or like fiddling around. Yeah, like yeah, it's very sensitive.
Um, is there any on the EV front?
So I contacted the head of IT right now because I'm with the city clerk's office, so that's why I stepped on. Did I contact the city clerk to get the IT for you guys? And they got back to me, but they addressed a different problem. So I just explained further what the issue was. I do have a lead on a speaker though, so if I get a speaker from here, that would solve the problem on hearing the people at home.
Sure, so the main thing, so yes, I want to hear folks at home, what I'm, most concerned about is that we get a good recording of people who are speaking.
Yeah, so in terms of the recording, I can hear it fine, like on my end. But the problem with this room is it's not the council chambers upstairs, which is designed for meetings. So I don't really have isolation control over a microphone, so I can't raise and lower the volume. So it's just a matter of speaking to them clearly and loudly.
Yeah. Are you able to perhaps do something on council chambers? I think we might need to.
If you would like to, I have the key and you guys can follow me. And if you'd like to send somebody else down to get this, and it would be a very, very quick setup as long as you guys just bring the iPads with you. I just need to plug them into chargers.
Yeah, I'm thinking about audio spectrum.
Yeah.
Sort of the relocations.
Yeah.
Before we. Steve broke.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, he's right there.
Here's. Oh, but here's your house.
I can hear it. I got a bunch of emails.
Sure.
But it's not, I can't, like, just right in the microphone.
Yeah. So I work for the city clerk's office, so I only do work in council chambers, and I was in council chambers last night, and there was no complaints.
If you want to adjourn, or let's take that. And just call it a. You said you needed 30 minutes to do that?
Yeah, 30 at most. At most.
So. Like. Okay, it'll be the same Zoom link for folks who are joining online.
Absolutely, and everyone could stay on Zoom. No one if you guys actually could not log out of your iPads, I can.
So before we move. We are going to. We need approximately 30 minutes to do so. It may take less time. We are going to keep the Zoom set and the same exact length up and stay on step in order to do this. But we're going to do that. As well as the recording here. So, appreciate and push for resets and meet that. Excellent, thank you.
All right, good evening. Let me turn my video back on. Good evening. We are going to resume the Planning and Zoning Commission's meeting on June 24th, 2026. Simon, good. I do see the recording light, so we are back in recording. We have shifted rooms. There was no discussion or votes or any actions taken during this pause as we moved from the community room up to the council chambers. At this time, I will turn it back to the applicant, and as the applicant wishes to proceed, I welcome them if they wish to have Mr. McCord speak again, because I understand that there were some AV issues, but understand if you'd like to move forward as well. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McCord, it's probably beneficial for you to make your comments again for the benefit of those who are online who couldn't hear or who heard some garbled commentary. So there we go.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And sorry again for the audio and visual issues.
No worries. This is substantially more awkward the second time around. Hi, I'm Austin, as you saw downstairs. I was born in Norwalk. I built a business in Norwalk, and I own a home in the Wilson Point neighborhood. My home happens to have a good fortune to overlook Manresa Island. And to me, Manresa has become a calling. I've been very lucky and had the opportunity to purchase the island from Argent. The goal is really to build a park there and to do something to serve the community, to connect people to nature, to connect people to each other, and to connect people to the sound. I believe that it's possible to do something exceptional on Manresa Island, and I believe that the work that we do there can serve as an example across the nation for how locations like this can be transformed to better serve the communities that they're in. In order to do that, I have been able to build a truly incredible team. It starts with Jess, who's our executive director at the Manresa Island Corp, and then Chris, Troy, Ed, Josh, Alex, and so many others who all support her, as well as Scape, nationally recognized landscape architecture firm out of New York City, who's overseeing sort of the overall design. Big is also here, which is another extremely well-known architecture firm who's helping us transform how the power plant can continue to serve the community. In addition, there are numerous subcontractors who've been helping us along the way, including AKRF, eDesign, Tie and Bond, and many more in helping us learn and understand more about the location. One of the big things that we have learned is that the transformation of Manresa cannot wait. The ecosystem that is there is not a sustainable ecosystem, and it will collapse in the next 10 to 20 years. It basically blew in through the wind when they stopped dumping coal ash. So it needs remediation and it needs changes done to it to become a true successional ecosystem. The building can't simply be set to left to decay. It either needs to find a new purpose or it needs to go. And there are environmental hazards there that should not be left untended to. There are actually lots of similar power plants on the Eastern Seaboard that are seeking to become something new to serve their communities. But many of them have struggled. And a lot of that is that they've become dependent in order to transform what they are. They needed money from the cities that they were in, the state, or the federal government. And in this day and age, that money can come or go with the winds of change. And it's very hard to sustain a long-term project that way. Manresa Wilds is different. We are not asking for money from Norwalk. We are not asking for money from the state of Connecticut, and we are not asking for money from the federal government. In addition, Manresa Wilds is not asking for money from Eversource. We are not asking for money from NRG to clean up the messes that happened there. Manresa Wilds is funded entirely through private donations, and Allison and I have publicly committed to spending at least $410 million associated with the transformation of this location. And that dollar value amount is what our team has said it takes in order to bring the site back up to a position where it will be ready to serve the community for the next 100 years. Of that, we've spent $50 million already. Manresa is much bigger than Allison and myself. And that's been very important to us since the beginning. And we've engaged the community with over a year of community engagement, reaching out to students in schools, reaching out to seniors, reaching out through all kinds of different public events held in a variety of different areas. And by taking people on tours through the site and through the building. If you haven't been on one, please go check it out so that you can get a firsthand look of what's there. And we've taken feedback from all of that. And that feedback has helped inform us on thousands of changes that we've made to the plan to ensure that what we're building suits and serves the community. And one of my favorite facts is that in capturing everything about the site and going through everything, we realized that, you know, a group in Norwalk had actually taken out an ad in the paper that the site wanted to be a park before it was a power plant. And they were very impassioned to the city that the city should help make that happen. And unfortunately, that didn't happen 70 years ago. But it makes me really feel like we're on the right path and that we're moving to make that happen now. I really feel like this project is a chance to allow this land to find its most productive use for Norwalk. And we put lots of controls in place to ensure that the site will be a fit for Norwalk today and that it can adjust and respond to the Norwalk of tomorrow. That includes a commitment to have the site have 24/7 security, which is there right now and will be in perpetuity in the future. We have controls around all of the parking, and we'd like for the site to be accessible from the water as well to reduce vehicular traffic. What we're here today to talk to you about, though, is your approval to create a district. Currently, the site is zoned for single-family housing. I can tell you that in all of the community engagement that we've done, nobody has come forth and said this should really be single-family housing. And so it makes sense to align the zoning for what the site wants to become. Last piece is just in this master plan, it includes sort of placeholders for all the things that the site might become in the future. Many of those we have no plans to develop, and we can be very clear about that at this time. And they're set up that we would need to come back and speak to a future planning and zoning committee if we ever wanted to do anything like that. But at the same time, we don't want to tie the hands of future Norwalkers as far as what they might be able to do in the site many, many years down the road. And so with that, I'll hand it back to Liz.
Thank you, Austin. This proposal before you, the text amendment, the zone change, and the special permit, follow nearly 2 years of site inspection and observation, ecological assessments and analyses to create enhancement and restoration plans and concepts for a resilient, accessible park known as Manresa Wilds. Once completed, Manresa Wilds will provide 120 acres of publicly accessible open space and also accessibility to Long Island Sound shorefront, along with offering educational, recreational, water-dependent, and water-related activities, and so much more. It's a long-term private effort to transform this land into a resilient, ecological preserve and publicly accessible waterfront park. I'd like to introduce members of the consultant team, many of you who you will hear from this evening. Jessica Vanashek, Manresa Wilds Executive Director, Doug Adams, Manresa Wilds Director of Entitlements, Chris Murphy, Chief of Design and Construction, Gina Worth, Colleen Juarez, and Shira Grossman, they are landscape architects with Scape, Ben Caldwell and Rita Seo, architects with Big Design, and Michael Beatty of AKRF Consulting, traffic consultants. Before we get into the presentation, if you will indulge me just a few more minutes, there's some housekeeping I need to do. The applications for zone change and text amendment were submitted on May 26th, and property owners within 100 feet of the property were notified of the submission on June 2nd by certificate of mailing. That certificate was returned to the staff and is part of the permanent file. Special permit application for the Development Park Master Plan was submitted on June 9th, and property owners again were notified of that submission on June 10th by certificate of mailing. Those certificates were also returned to the staff. For tonight's hearing, again, property owners within 100 feet were notified of the hearing by certified mail return receipt requested on June 11th, and those domestic return receipt cards or any letters that came back to us as undeliverable were delivered to staff today and are part of the file. Lastly, a public notice sign as required by your regulations at the entrance to Manresa was erected on June 8th and remains in place today and will continue to remain in place throughout this process until you reach a decision. One other thing, resumes of those who will be making presentations tonight have been submitted to this commission, and I request that you qualify them as experts based upon their educational background and experience. So let's begin. So Manresa Wilds. The property is owned by Manresa Osprey LLC. It is located on Longshore Avenue in Norwalk. It's bordered by Longshore Avenue to the north, residentially developed properties, and Long Island Sound to the east, Long Island Sound to the south, and tidal wetlands to the west. It is District 5, Block 86, Lots 1 and 2. The zone is currently CD1S. The property is approximately 125 acres, depending upon the fluctuation of the mean high water line. Existing conditions, as you're well aware, it's been called Manresa Island since its ownership as a retreat by the Jesuits in the 1940s. In fact, its name is derived from the place in Spain where St. Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Jesuit order, was believed to have profound spiritual experiences. From the 1950s to about 2013, it was a coal-fired, then oil-fired electricity generating plant with such owners as Connecticut Light and Power, United Illuminating, and NRG. The plant ceased operations, as you know, in 2013. Multiple structures still exist on the property and were used as part of the electricity generating plant. They include the turbine hall, the boiler building, administrative building, and other structures. The oil tanks were removed from the site just a couple of months ago. We believe that the reclamation and adaptive reuse of Manresa Island has been a goal by many for many decades, and this proposal brings full circle from the 1950s, this very concept, when citizens urged city leaders to purchase the property for open space with waterfront access, calling it, quote, an investment we must make. So here we are about 75 years later, suggesting the same thing to you. Nearly a decade ago, the city and the Manresa Association undertook what was called the Manresa Island Reuse Study to solicit feedback regarding public sentiment about use of the island. The study revealed overwhelming support for passive public open space, 79%, and conservation area, about 68%. Also, a maritime oceanographic facility and outdoor concert space were among other uses that the populace suggested, so as to, quote, turn Manresa into something that can be used by many in the area. We believe Manresa Wilds concept aligns with these concepts and the survey participants' general support of this use as a site for a public park. More recently, following stakeholder and community engagement regarding sustainability and resilience in 2023, participants suggested that maintaining and enhancing waterfront access through open space and parks was a priority in Norwalk. As part of this undertaking, additional objectives to be explored included improving open space access, conservation, all of which could be, quote, to build awareness of and connection to coastal resources, improving public understanding of coastal risks. The proposed zone change from the CD1S, its current classification, to the Special District Manresa Wilds, which we suggest the zone be created, the text amendments and the Development Park Master Plan provide a comprehensive framework for this commission and the city for short-term and the long-term development of the property into Manresa Wilds. As you listen to our presentation, I ask that you take a few things into consideration, you keep them in mind. First, what is a zone change? What is a map change? This is an action by this commission authorized under section 8.4.14 of your regulations. And the standards that you apply to that map change are: the proposed new zone and request to amend the zoning map is consistent with the authority granted to the commission in section 8.4.14b. And the regulations, quote, wherever the public necessity, convenience, and general welfare require such amendment. 2, rezoning is consistent with the plan of conservation and development. 3, the legal purposes for which zoning exists are not contravened. 4, there will be no adverse effect upon adjacent property owners unless such effect can be justified by the overwhelming public good or welfare. 5, the new zone is firmly supported by the goals of the plans of conservation and development. And 6, the proposal is reasonable and rational, serving to regulate uses on the property, along with providing appropriate safeguards through carefully considered height and bulk restrictions, building types, exterior materials, architectural features for new buildings that serve Manresa Osprey, while being thoughtful to impacts to surrounding neighborhoods. When acting upon an application for zone change or for text amendment, this commission acts in its legislative capacity, and that's been upheld by the Connecticut courts in numerous cases. Specifically, the courts in Connecticut, quote, empower zoning authorities to the discretion to determine the public need and the means of meeting it because the local authority lives close to the circumstances and conditions that create the problem and shape the solution. The test of the commission's legislative action is twofold, whether it's a zone change or the text amendment. 1, the change must be in accord with the comprehensive plan, that is your zoning regulations. And 2, it must be reasonably related to the police power granted to this commission under its enabling legislation, which it has. As to the various text amendments, the standards are also articulated in your regulations in section 8.4.13F, and they include that the amendments must be consistent with the purpose and intent statements of the regulations, which allow the commission to amend the regulations, quote, whenever it is alleged that wherever the public necessity, convenience, and general welfare require such an amendment, that the proposed texts represent a new idea not considered in the regulations or represent a revision necessitated by changing circumstances over time, that the proposed regulation changes are consistent with the advisory plan of conservation development and comply with state and local statutes, that they are consistent with the overarching goals of the City of Norwalk's POCD, and that they recognize that a healthy and vibrant city is constantly evolving in big and small ways to remain desirable by meeting changing demands, and that if a place stays behind and stays the same, it risks stagnation and slowly being left behind. Those are direct quotes from your POCD. Again, text amendments, you act in a legislative capacity. We believe the text amendments further carry out the specific goals set forth in the POCD, and there are many of them. The POCD often specifically enumerates Manresa Island as an area that's expected to generate significant development opportunities in the future, The POC emphasizes access to Long Island Sound as a desired goal, often identifying Manresa Island as an area where public access could be achieved. If all the requisite approvals are secured, Manresa Wilds, as I said earlier, will be one of the largest privately funded parks in the United States. It will allow access to nearly 2 miles of waterfront, offer boat launches, trails, outdoor gathering space, recreation space, indoor activated space, university-led research and educational programming, nature exploration, revived ecological habitats, robust new landscaping, open parkland for relaxation and play, community space, and many other uses. As you know, work is already underway for the North Forest, which we expect to open to the public a year from now. So before you tonight, there are 3 applications, and I promise this is the end of my commentary. We have a map zone change to reclassify the property from CD1S to the new zone called Special District Manresa Wilds, which includes within it height and bulk requirements, coverage, building, landscaping, lighting design requirements, a table of uses to identify the uses we contemplate in the SDMW, which are either identified as P permitted, PL permitted with limitations, SPU permitted by special permit, or NP not permitted. This will serve as a guiding document for future uses and structures for the property and adaptive uses of them as well. In addition, as I said before, there's a zone text amendment application, and that is presented to you to revise the remainder of the zoning regulations to reflect where appropriate this new zone, the SDMW, and to adjust the regulations where they may be in conflict with or not adequately reflect or address the proposed SDMW zone. Lastly, we have a special permit application for a development park master plan, and this will serve as a short-term and long-term roadmap for this commission and the staff regarding the overall project and its phases. The master plan is a conceptual document which may likely be revised over time with input from the commission. At this point, I'd like to have Jess Bonacek come up and she has some commentary, and then she will likely be followed by Doug Adams, Chris Murphy, Gina Worth, Mike Beatty, Rita Theo, and others. If you have any questions for us at any time, please feel free to ask them. We're happy to answer questions. And if we're confusing or if we are not clear, we take that opportunity to do so. One last thing, we have received some comments from some SEAC agencies, and that stands for Code Enforcement Administration Committee. Yesterday, we received comments from the fire department, from DPW and WPCA, and those are being reviewed. We received comments at 5 o'clock yesterday from TMP, and those are under review. And today we received a sign off from South Norwalk Electric and Water. Jess?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Jess Bonacek, and I'm the Executive Director of Manresa Island Corp. For those of you just learning about Manresa Island Corp, it is the 501c3 that was created by Allison and Austin McCord with the mission to be able to remediate Manresa Island, restore the ecology, to be able to build out Manresa Wilds, and then operate and maintain the park in perpetuity. I did want to comment before I get started just on how we decided to submit applications in order for a special district. When we first started looking at Manresa Island and trying to understand how to bring a park that's accessible to the public to fruition, we basically looked at 2 regulatory paths. One was an overlay and the other was a special district. And I think that the conclusion that we came to was that really, when we looked at the overlay, it would actually almost just act as a temporary sort of overlay for a single family residential, and that the goal of the publicly accessible park was so misaligned with what we are trying to establish with the actual single family zoning that is currently in place, that we knew that a significant public asset really meant for a framework to be built where we could move forward in a way that was solid, knowing that the city and that Manresa Wilds can work together and be able to build a regulatory framework to bring a Manresa Wilds to reality. And so not using the overlay, which would be the temporary sort of fix to this challenge, but using a special district where we said, okay, it's a different process, it's a little bit longer, a little bit more complex, but we think that it makes the most sense, not only for the park itself, but also the city, and being able to ensure that there's a transparent and an accountable way in order to be able to bring this park to the public. I wanted to just quickly go over what we'll be discussing this evening. We're going from core values and existing conditions to more of the technical information, looking at the landscape and the building and also traffic. You're going to hear from a number of different consultants that we've been working with for more than 2 years. When Austin spoke earlier, he was saying, you know, it's been a lot of research. It's been a lot of months looking at how to revitalize a site that looks like this, including coming up with the price of $410 million. And the team that we brought forward to you to look at the park and present to you this evening is the team that has helped us understand not what exists on the surface and what we see and what we hear and what we sort of can see across the water, but really actually getting into and peeling the onion, as we often say, and understanding sort of where that coal ash lies and why it's important for the city and the park in order to be able to address that. Manresa Island Corp, as I mentioned, is the nonprofit that was established by Allison and Austin, and it has these 5 core goals that help guide us in our work. And it's guided our work for over the last 2 years, but it's really important in order to share them with you, to be able to share with you what we value and what our principles are in moving forward, not only through the design and construction of the park, but also in the operation of the park. The first is being able to understand that this is a place like no other, 125-acre site with almost 2 miles of coastline, right in South Norwalk, accessible by many different transit nodes. But of course, it also has a history, and we'll talk about that history. The second is, related to the first is an accessible shoreline. And I wanted to actually include this slide because it really highlights what this project is meant to do, which is increase the public's ability to access the Long Island Sound and access water. This actually shows all of the coastline that is owned privately and the coastline that is owned publicly. And as you can see, a lot of the publicly accessible coastline is actually the islands, which, as we know, really are not that accessible at all, except for Sheffield. And so bringing this project online unlocks the 1.7 miles of coastline for Long Island Sound. An island for all. One of the things that we've talked a lot about is who can access the site and how they can access the site. And this is meant to be a site for everyone. We've talked about how people will get to the site. We will talk about why it's important to us, but I think more than anything, what we're trying to do is establish a place where anyone, any mobility, any age, any income, any background, any ethnicity has the ability to come to the site and be able to have access just like everybody else does to the sound. And that's so important, especially looking at Fairfield County and looking at Connecticut, when you may be a municipality that does not live on the coast and you may not have the ability to purchase the beach pass that gets you to the water for the day. And that's why this site is so important in a lot of what we're doing. Another is a model for future forward thinking. Austin commented that this is just one of hundreds of sites, even just in the Northeast and across the country, that look like this. There's so many sites that are on the water that have been used as power plants that are now decommissioned. Using this site, we have the ability to work with different institutions to actually curate the story and curate decisions and understand how those decisions were made, including the last 2 years of research, so that we can talk to cities like New Haven and cities like Bridgeport and be able to share what we've learned about our site so that others can take on their site to be able to bring public available parcels online for them as well. In addition to that, it's a hub for learning and discovery. We have memorandums of understanding signed with Sacred Heart University, Wesleyan University, the Maritime Aquarium, the Board of Education in the city of Norwalk, as well as Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. And the reason for that is to be able to understand how to use the site as a living laboratory and a living observatory. That is one of the things that we heard very, very heavily from residents in Norwalk, that they would like to see the site used for education and research purposes. And we believe that this is an amazing opportunity to be able to do that. One of the things we've talked a lot about is that you cannot learn to love something unless you have access to it. And so being able to have access to the water and the Long Island Sound means that you have the ability to learn about it and gain a love, which means you'll be the next steward. We have the ability to really shape the next stewards in remediation and restoration. And lastly, a revitalized ecology. With a site like this, with the level of remediation that's required, it often looks like a sanctuary, but we know that that's really just a romanticized idea where it is coal ash. And we know that the terrapin are laying eggs in the coal ash, and we know that the blue herons are doing the same. We understand that the wetlands that are currently there that should be tidal wetlands and freshwater wetlands are not working the way in which they should. And so while the site does look like a sanctuary, it actually is not. And Austin commented as well that the birch forest will fall down, that ecology will actually degrade over time. And so this project is so heavily invested in being able to revitalize the ecology in a major way. Existing conditions for the site. Originally, the site was only 23 acres, and that's part of what makes this site so incredibly unique. When Connecticut Light and Power bought the site in the 50s, it was 23 acres, and they constructed the power plant on those 23 acres. In the 60s, the plant burned coal, and Connecticut Light and Power took all of the coal ash and the fly ash, and they distributed it with blowers across the site. And that's how Manresa Island actually became a peninsula, because it's not an island at all, as we all know. Through the 70s, the plant transferred from coal to oil, and the 7.5 million gallon oil tanks were built within a stone's throw of the Long Island Sound, which of course we now have taken those down as of last year. But the site has changed over time to such a great degree. One of the amazing blessings of this project is that there is a 100-acre birch forest that just happened to have blown in naturally. And we have this ability to understand how to measure remediation and measure how that forest takes care of itself over time and how that can actually happen on sites like this. But it's made for a very unique ecosystem and a very unique opportunity where we have this amazing landscape, but also a building that exists in the landscape as well. So today we have a 125-acre site. So that's 102 acres of coal ash that was laid in the lowlands and the wetlands. It has two separate pieces, I would say, that function together. One is the landscape piece, which includes the birch forest and those wetlands that I was mentioning, as well as the federally dredged berth, which still has a 20-foot draft at low tide. And the second piece is the building, this amazing building that really isn't a single building, it's 3 buildings, and you'll hear much more about that as we go on, and Rita presents from BIG. But as you can see, there are many different elements that are currently on the site, and all those that we're taking account for in the work in which we're doing. And with that, I'd like to pass it to Doug. But first, I will comment that of all of the work that we've done, and Austin mentioned it as well, it's been so important in order to be able to take into consideration community feedback. This is a community asset, it is meant for the community. We've heard from thousands and thousands of people over the last year and a half. We've also toured thousands of people on the actual site itself. We've made thousands of changes from what was presented in July to February the 19th. And what you'll see tonight is the incorporation of all of those thousands of feedback that we've received and worked into the plan, not only from a landscape standpoint, but also a building standpoint as well. Doug?
Thank you, Jess. Commissioners, I'm Doug Adams. I'm working with Manresa on entitlements. It's really fascinating. I learned a lot about the history of this site that, having grown up my whole life here, I knew nothing about. And it's been a pleasure, and to now pivot and look forward and lead off and set the stage for Chris and his team to tell you about the plans coming out of what Jess showed as the vision, I think is truly exciting. What you're going to see is a fusing of the McCord's vision with an expert team's experience and expertise, and the community and city agency feedback we've gotten, and all that is coming in. And first and foremost, it started to develop the master plan and what should be here. And then we tailored that with a table of uses, Article 4, that's in your materials, of what the uses we feel that are appropriate in zoning speak for the long term, right? Not just for the immediate. And you'll see that. I'm not going to run through that table in detail. You have it. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions as we move forward. It's available online as well as part of the materials. But we did follow the nomenclature that the city zoning regulations use. These uses that we feel are permitted, we're proposing is permitted with limitations, by special permit use, where we would come back with additional information, and not permitted at all. So just on the commit, I'm going to highlight some of the key ones as we go through it, and again, not go through line by line. We are proposing, we think it's appropriate for all recreational uses except for sports fields. The intent here is not to have large organized sports. There are plenty of other places that is not what's deemed here. Cultural and entertainment uses, the research and development facility and marine research laboratory through partnerships that Jess mentioned. An event space, I think, is a valuable asset for the city in terms of community use and nonprofit use and other activities to make the park truly sustainable in the long term. A theater, restaurant for visitors, and a brew pub and distillery are some of the specific ones. Permitted with limitations. Obviously, marine uses make sense here, but we want to make sure that the boat rentals, sales, and leasings aren't what you see perhaps down on the waterfront in South Norwalk, but for rental only for launch at the site, kayak rental, those types of things. Boat building would be for educational uses. A boat terminal would be for passenger ferry service only for multimodal transportation. And a harbor point port facility, delivery, removal of construction materials where appropriate, and a ferry service. Earlier this year, this commission approved the Northern Forest, which included a learn pocket. And we feel that kind of amphitheater is important, and it was approved, and it should be codified here in the zoning that the North Forest is going to live under. So we're asking for that as a use with limitations. Now, if there was an amphitheater of more than 150 seats, we would have to, the limitations that would have to come back as a special permit. Similarly, with the commercial recreational establishment, that we would, site plan applications required for any commercial recreational establishment here between 5,000 and 20,000 square feet in one of the buildings. And a special permit would be required for anything over 20,000 square feet. We're trying to sort of set what makes sense as part of the master plan. If it grew in size, we would come back to the commission. A dormitory, which we think in the long term, there's no current plans for that, could be important to some of our partners. And we would limit it to tied to people that have a presence on site or have interns that are working on site. We're not trying to build dormitories that could be just used for UConn's sake. Sorry to single out UConn. And lastly, a parking structure. We're not proposing a parking structure. It's surface parking that you'll see in the concept plan. But over the long term, it may come to pass that there is a need for some additional parking. We would come back for that. And we think that that should be an allowed use, but limited to 2 levels above grade, no more than 27 feet, and fully screened. So we think that is a reasonable way to do it, to set it up for the long term. That's, again, the summary of the uses that grew out of the process we've been through to date. I'm going to take that uses and turn it to Chris, who can talk about the master plan with his team in much more detail.
Hi, I'm Chris Murphy, Chief of Design and Construction for the Manresa Island Corp team. I joined the team about 1.5 years ago, and I'm here to present on how those table of uses find themselves into the master plan that you see in front of you. And then I'll hand it off to the design team that's going to walk you through first the power plant complex and then the landscaping design. So as you can see, there's a color intention here. The orange buildings are focused and centered around the power plant complex, and those are specific to being adaptively reused. Those are existing to be improved and enhanced for uses that Doug walked through in the uses slide just before this. All the purple buildings are the current master planned layout and framework that we've come to over the past year plus of design. So these are in the master plan. The uses are tied to these. The scaling is very intentional of what we believe Manresa Wilds needs to be a sustainable and operational park. I'm going to walk through them fairly quickly because we will touch on them later in the presentation, but just want to be grounded in the overall site plan for Manresa. So running north to south, which is at the upper portion, the first two buildings that we are planning are really a guard building at the entrance for that 24/7 security as well as access control, and then a restroom as well. And both those structures have already gone through the planning and zoning process and been approved. Under construction, we'll talk about phasing later and timing for those, but those are already happening. As you move south interior of the site, the next thing you come across is building 5, which is an operations and maintenance hub, structure, warehouse, water treatment facility, et cetera. It's the backbone of the island operations. So that's really the back of house, how things get done and how the place gets maintained. Directly adjacent to it and next to the Cedar Swamp is building 4, which is meant to be an urban ecology center for research, education, etc. Moving south, building 3 is exciting. It's a restroom. Building 9 is set up to be a food and beverage pavilion near the waterfront. Building 8 is a kayak rental structure. And then at the south end of the PowerPoint, the last 2 new structures are focused and centered around the smokestack. So it's the pool pavilion structure and the pool structure itself. So that is the extent of the structures and the masses planned for on-site, not heavy footprint by no means, but they provide the support and recreational backbone for the park. And then to quickly touch on the orange buildings, 10 is the admin wing, 11 is the turbine hall, 12 is the boiler building, and then we are planning on leaving the smokestack itself behind. I'm going to hand it off next to go into the design of the power plant complex to Rita with Big.
Thanks, Chris, for the great introduction to the structures on site. Hi, my name is Rita. Good evening, everyone. I'm a senior architect at Bjarke Ingels Group. We are the lead architect for the power plant transformation at Manresa Wilds. We are very excited to just share the vision and the design of this building and also what we've learned from the community in the past year. So at the core of Manresa Wilds is a 1960s power plant. The decommissioned power plant will be transformed into a year-round community hub for gathering, learning, and discovery. As Austin and Jess said, this vision has been shaped by over a year of public engagement, as well as thoughtfully crafted by a team of designers, engineers, experts in the field over the last 2 years. This building is this power plant is a building complex consisting of 4 distinctive structures, purpose-built for specific function. The largest of the 4 is the boiler building with the height of 170 feet. This 14-story has a really dense matrix of well-preserved and sound steel structures, making it a great candidate for an adaptive reuse project centered on play, recreation, and education. The second largest one is the turbine building. It has a height of 100 feet. The main hall within the turbine building houses 2 large turbine generators. It has a generous space with a 180-foot by 120-foot floor plate and a 57-foot clear ceiling height. It will become a large gathering space for event and community. The third structure is the 65-foot admin building. It will be a support for the plant and the park by offering food and beverage. The smokestack is 355 feet tall. The tallest structure on site. At the base of this smokestack, there will be a 2-story pool pavilion wrapping around the base of this smokestack to support all sorts of water-based activities at the park. It's with the maximum height of 30 feet tall. So here is, you see all the structure. We are keeping all the existing height with the built structure that is 2-story. Okay, and then let's see. The 88,000 turbine hall really serve as the heart of this building complex. It creates a really welcoming gateway to the power plant, celebrating the history of the building. And we're really trying to preserve the existing facade design. We have keep in mind that we wanted to minimize this neighborhood impact. And also we've designed lighting to be as minimal and also as contained as possible. The goal here is to really protect the neighbors' nights and migratory birds and also the coastal wildlife by incorporating bird-friendly glass as well. In addition, the goal is also to celebrate the history of the building. You see the two existing former, let's see, the transformers really framing the entryway, which is the two-story canopy, gives glimpses of the community space inside and also work as a guest drop-off area. The structure standing here really represent enormous human resources and also effort, engineered to last for generations. The structure is well maintained. It has approximately 21,000 tons of concrete and 4,600 tons of steel. So by repurposing and reusing the superstructure and foundation, we really can reduce significantly the environmental impact, avoiding 75% of embodied carbon by keeping the buildings in place, rather than building a new facility in a similar size from scratch in this region. As you enter into the building on the existing floor, you will be greeted by a large feature stair, leading you up to various destinations and community space within the plant, along with informal areas, waiting area. You can also see at each side of the feature stair, you will experience the turbine concrete piers, really framing the entryway, as well as the two cooling pipes that are on both sides. We are preserving it, really celebrating the building's historic relationship to the Long Island Sound with a network of underground tunnels connecting to the building to the water. As you ascend to the level 2, it's an education and community level. Formal relics of the plant are preserved and also displayed in key locations, connecting the visitors to the site's industrial legacy. As you ascend to level 3, you will enter into a 22,000 square foot of flexible event space, capable of hosting a wide range of events, performances, and community gatherings. From all the community feedback that we've heard over the past year, this type of large gathering space is something that the Norwalk residents have wanted and needed. And we're designing this for around approximately 800 guests on this event floor. And we really believe that this amazing event hall will be a great addition to Norwalk. Overlooking this event hall, mezzanine level will provide also pay functions and also spill out areas. The control room, which a lot of people also visited and really like the historic panels and all the brain of used to be the brain of the power plant, will transform into a spectacular social gathering space just right underneath the operational entryway. Moving to the admin building that is extending from the turbine, this will be a really key supportive asset for the park and the plant, with an entire floor dedicated to cafe and restaurant that is connecting to the park level. Conferencing and also supportive facility for events will be located on the upper level. Here you see the cafe and restaurant porch will grow and shrink with the season, with the panoramic view of the Long Island Sound, with informal seatings and accessible ramp that directly bring you to the park. The cafe and restaurants are designed to host around 200 seats and with the opportunity to have outdoor seating. This indoor and outdoor seamless connection really invite people to gather, to relax and rejuvenate. We have this operable wall design that opens up the entire space in summer months, really maximizing the connection between indoor to the Great Lawn outside and also the Long Island Sound beyond. Here you can see the interior design. It's to celebrate this mid-century heritage of the power plant, showcasing its original glazed ceramic tiles, terrazzo, and also the wooden millwork on the ceiling. As you approach to the beach, you will be greeted by this striking two-story pool pavilion that wrapping around the base of this iconic smokestack. The design really embraces the site's landmark, transforming it into a memorable meet-up point and also a lookout destination. This new build addition supports a community pool and also the adjacent natural beach by offering food service and also under seating area on the park level. We have lockers, restrooms, and also the changing room amenity on level 2 that's connecting to the pool deck. And on the top, the rooftop, we will have a sun deck as well as diving platforms. So this design of this pool pavilion actually generated by an accessible ramp, inviting visitors to circulate from the ground floor to the pool deck all the way to the sun deck, turning universal access into a welcoming architecture experience for all. Here you can see at the pool deck, you will enjoy this panoramic view of the Long Island Sound, the sun deck, and also the diving platforms that is playfully incorporated into the pool pavilion architecture. Along with the shaded trellis, the pool pavilion and the pool deck really create this one-of-a-kind, unique water experience for Norwalk families, framed by the building's historical heritage on the site and also the coastal landscape beyond. It's a place for you to enjoy under the sun and really answers the community's desire to have the ability to access to water or also enjoy the water in many ways. Here is the boiler building. This building will be activated by future educational partners, focusing on community and also educational programming. We envision the eastern half of the building will be a vertical park space, bringing the park into the building with lush greenery, walking trails, slides, and also industrial features, wrapping around this vertical dynamic space. It will be an all-weather indoor play, activating the park for all seasons. It will be a true cathedral for family to learn about the history of the building as well as the park. The western half of the boiler building will focus on gathering space and also learning used by the communities and also as well as researchers. Here is the view looking at the auditorium, taking a full advantage of the incredible views to the Long Island Sound. Along the northern edge of the building, the upper level at the height of 170 feet will overlook the entire city of Norwalk and become a destination restaurant to bring the community together. Here at the western half of the building, focusing on institutional uses and dedicated space for research facilities, classroom, and laboratory. And here's a rendering showing the Woods Hole oceanographic, potentially housing an ocean lab at Mesa Wilds. With all the rendering that we presented here today, we really see a social ecosystem coming alive. It's a Norwalk icon for community and culture, play and recreation, research and education for many generations to come. Thank you, and I will pass to Gina to talk about the landscape design at Mesa Wilds. Thank you, Rita.
And thank you so much to the commissioners for your thoughts and questions this evening, and the greater public who has really helped shape this landscape and the vision for it over a long period of public engagement. So I'm Gina Worth, I'm design principal at Scape, and I've been really truly honored to be working on this project. Scape has had the challenge and the opportunity of taking Austin and Allison's vision for the site and Manresa Island Corporation's 5 goal statements, an island for all, a future forward place, all of the complexity that Jess presented, and translating it into actionable and visionary large-scale landscape plan. So that is what I'm going to share with you this evening. We're going to walk through the master plan vision for the landscape and how it interacts with the building and how these indoor-outdoor spaces really come to life. This project is a complete transformation of a contaminated and post-industrial site into an equitable, resilient, and ecologically rich vision for the future in Norwalk. But to take a step back, I think what's also really important about this process is that it has been a very iterative and thoughtful process of working with many different stakeholders to inform the design vision over time. That came through conversations with the greater Manresa Island Corporation team. It came through rigorous site analysis and investigations, understanding more about the contaminated legacy of the site, going out with ecological experts over multiple seasons and studying the ecology of the place and learning about invasive species that are occupying the site today, and how different unique ecosystems are adapting to the existing contaminated context. It also involved greater site analysis of the wider kind of parks context within Greater Norwalk, understanding those relationships of how does the public access the shore and how could we provide amenities and experiences within Manresa Wilds that were unique and not just replicating other spaces that already existed. It's also involved a huge amount of state and city agency coordination. The work that we're showing to you today has not been done in a vacuum. We've been working with multiple departments from transportation to Connecticut Deep to make sure that the proposal that we're showing is actionable and implementable. It's also involved extensive community engagement, as Jess shared in her presentation, and some of the work that I'll be walking through today, I'll try and call out moments where the community has really shaped the direction. We've very explicitly updated the vision in response to that feedback. And now we're entering into the planning and zoning process, which we've been in for quite a while with different phases of the project. And while many of these bars, for example, are ending in this diagram, I think the whole goal is that this work continues to evolve. We imagine the community continuing to be a part of this process and a part of the design of the park over the many years under which it's constructed. So to take a step back and look at the overall site plan, sorry, the text is a little bit small on the screen, but we'll walk through each of the different individual zones for the vision for the landscape. At a high level, I think one of the most unique aspects of the site itself is its relationship to the water. It's not a monotonous waterfront at Manresa Wilds. It's an extremely diverse waterfront. And that's something we heard over and over in the community meetings, that people wanted to access the water and they wanted rich, unique waterfront experiences that reflected the existing context of the site. So on the east side of the site, you have a much larger vista and panorama out to Norwalk Harbor and the kind of connection to the greater Long Island Sound. On the southern portion of the site, there's real potential for more of a coastal, rocky, more natural beach, as well as the very unique, highly constructed harbor inlet moment, a very unique asset within the greater region's waterfront. And then on the west side of the site, a very well-established and quite evocative coastal marsh, salt marsh ecosystem. So our whole site design is trying to very delicately and carefully introduce people to these different ecosystems and these different possible relationships with water, and make sure they're accessible, make sure they're widely open to the public, but that their ecological resources are being protected and preserved over time. Another major aspect of the site planning process was to really be respectful of the wider neighbors and surrounding community. You can see that many of the more active programs within the site, there was a great desire for example, play spaces or a lawn to like throw a frisbee around or have a gathering space or a beach-like experience. All of those more active uses are clustered towards the southeastern portion of the site, as far away from the existing communities to the west and the north as possible, and buffered with significant vegetation. We've tried to make sure that that active footprint really takes up just the smaller, lower portion of the project, and the more passive programs, for example, forest trails, walking loops, ecological restoration opportunities are happening in the northern portions, which are closer to the greater community. So I'll walk through the plan and other slides, but I'm happy to return to this slide because it shows everything at the same scale on the same page with all of the different programs laid out. Just to start at the northern portion of the site, starting here because this phase of the project is actually already underway. It was already permitted and was shared with the Planning and Zoning Commission earlier this year. This is called the Northern Forest Design. I'm just sharing it here for context. I won't go into great detail, but a real goal of this place is to open up the site quickly and make it accessible to the wider community and make it a passive space, a passive recreation space and ecological restoration space for all. So to really deliver on those commitments of Manresa Wilds. You see there is additional roadway infrastructure that's being designed to enable buses and education groups to come to this portion of the site, modest parking to facilitate use by neighbors, pedestrian and walking paths that connect directly to the greater neighborhood, and then a walking loop that kind of circles the site with many different scales of like smaller scale walking paths and family paths happening within the forest. This is in part a restoration project and a remediation project. So we are ensuring with this work, with the collaboration of AKRF and Connecticut Deep, that the forest, for the first time in many decades, quite soon will be open and available for all to safely use the pathways and experience this very unique forest ecosystem. One of the things we're doing within the forest is there are large zones of invasive species, and we've targeted those zones for restoration. And within 3 of those largest areas, we've identified different scales of passive gathering spaces. One is called a meadow pocket or ecological pocket. One is called a gathering room or gather pocket shown in the middle. And the third is called it's like an outdoor classroom space or learn pocket, as we call it in the Manresa Wilds language. But you can see that these different goals, the ecological restoration, the passive gathering, and the outdoor education align perfectly with Manresa Wilds' stated vision and goals as an organization. We're very excited about these spaces. As Austin mentioned, within this landscape, the birch forest itself is an ecosystem that grew over the coal ash when it was deposited there. It's one of these very unique species that can handle like the modified pH of the soil and the contaminated fly ash material. Most species can't survive in this like harsh context. But because they all sprouted and grew at the same time, gray birch is an early successional species. So this canopy is in the process of kind of aging out. These trees are living an interesting life here on Manresa Wilds, but they are beginning to reach the last decades of their lifespan. And so the question is, once all of these trees naturally age and fall, if a new, more resilient native forest ecosystem is not slowly planted and grown in its place, it will just be ripe for more species invasion and ecological deterioration over time. So a goal of this project is to not only make it accessible for people on these raised paths outside of the contaminated zones, but also help heal the forest slowly over time and catalyze this process of ecological restoration. So the Northern Forest was approved by the Norwalk Planning and Zoning Commission in February of 2026, and the opening is anticipated summer of 2027. I was out on the site 2 weeks ago, walking around some of the paths and systems that are in place, and I think it's going to be a really transformative experience, even in these first phase. So to step back to the greater project, we were just talking about the North Forest, which is this. Oh, unfortunately, it doesn't work. Okay, is the loop on the northern portion of the screen. But we've tried to design a site plan and framework that enables well-distributed and functional circulation throughout the site that builds upon many different modes of transportation. This is a very well-connected site in that it has roadway access. It's connected to Norwalk's public transportation system in the form of a bus with potential to extend the bus further into the site with time. We've planned for ample parking on the site to kind of serve the uses that have been shared both by myself in the later slides, but also by Rita and the discussion of the building and the programs of the building. We've also thought a lot about bicycle and pedestrian connectivity, making sure there are dedicated bicycle paths and pedestrian paths pulling people into the site, encouraging walking and use by locals, and importantly, potential for use and transportation with a shuttle bus system and other public transportation systems over time. The site also is connected to water-based transportation systems. So if you're able to see the legend here, we've called out the potential on the southern portion of the Harbor Inlet, this area for a dedicated ferry stop that potentially could connect to destinations like potentially Sheffield Island or the aquarium, or help connect back to train transportation. So many ways to kind of connect in and use the site. When you are at the site and using the space, we have a hierarchical system of circulation paths that help you navigate the space. Primary paths, like a large loop, a multimodal loop that can be used for bicyclists and pedestrians that helps you access all of the different portions of the waterfront and is fully ADA accessible. Secondary paths that bring you to many of the different programmed areas and planted spaces, and then tertiary paths that provide these more intimate, smaller scale experiences and allow you to have the feeling of getting lost in nature. And the other important circulation concept I haven't mentioned yet is this opportunity to kind of use the site as a place to be able to experience the water in different ways. For example, kayaking. And so we have a dedicated kayak launch for people interested in like learning how to kayak, or maybe getting on a kayak for the first time in the Harbor Inlet, a kind of protected space. And then a small launch space on the southern portion of the site, where that icon is on the west side, to be able to explore the greater Long Island Sound and Norwalk region. The other thing I'll point out within this diagram is here. It's a little difficult to see the icons. Here is a space where it was mentioned there's desire to have a place for boats to pull up and be able to access the site through boat. So like a small, like not a commercial marina space, but a marina space that would allow for boat users to dock. So this view here is showing really the kind of synthesis of architecture and landscape that's happening at that active core. We're looking at that active core of the site right now. You can see Rita was describing some of the building functions, the historic admin building, the turbine, the boiler, and the pool pavilion. So kind of starting at that moment and working out. We're trying to make sure that the landscape is literally rising up and meeting these new elevations that are being proposed. This is a feature that allows us to better connect with these program spaces and have better indoor-outdoor relationship. But it's also an action that allows us to cap any contaminated material and lift portions out of the future floodplain to make it a more resilient site over time. So that's a really important piece of the design framework, is lifting portions of the site, especially these more actively programmed areas, so they're out of those future floodplains, and then allowing places that can flood to flood, for example, like the beach ecosystem, allowing that to flood over time and making sure it's being done in a safe way through a remediation strategy. So standing at the pool pavilion, or kind of coming in through the turbine hall, there are many different landscape experiences to kind of encounter. One is the recreational lawn, which pulls out from the building and has edges planted with a native grass and plant meadow, as well as large canopy trees for shade and lingering. It provides excellent views over the harbor and the harbor inlet. Moving to the west, we have the pool pavilion space and the more active pool zone facing the south with a very significant planted buffer to the west for the neighbors. And from that pool pavilion, like small scale spaces for dining and casual conversation and, shade and beach umbrellas, and moving through this planted zone before you get to the beach. One of the pieces of feedback we really heard from the community was that people desired beach type ecosystems, but didn't want to have kind of like artificial manicured beaches that felt like too active or too like false for the context. They really wanted spaces that felt more natural and more wild and more like some of the beach environments you might encounter on Sheffield Island, for example. And so we have some of these spaces designed into the project. As you move from the pool pavilion down to the beach, you move through a space called the Shrub Scramble, which is reflective of like these dune ecosystems and the vegetation that naturally grows there. And then a different gradations of beach environment along the waterfront edge. Many of them planted, spaces for hammocks, spaces for small gathering, a pocket wetland. So we're really imagining this to be an extremely unique beach destination that's very different from other beach destinations within publicly accessible Norwalk. I don't know what happened. The next image is supposed to be of the approach to the building, I believe.
Simon, is that something you can assist with on your end? Oh, here we go. It was the laptop. It was the laptop? Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve. There we go.
No presentation is complete without a technical glitch.
To the commission members, while we're waiting for them to bring back the presentation, I'd like to propose that after they finish their presentation, we take a small break and then we can dive into questions and such afterwards. I mean, feel free to ask questions during the presentation, but I'd like to take a break between their presentation and our discussion.
My kidneys appreciate it.
A little bit longer, Doug.
No, while you're working, I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
Which frankly was answered in your presentation in February, but I'm not sure it's something that the audience has heard. You can't walk by that site without seeing lots of deer. How do you intend to address the issue of the deer problem, not only on that property, but also on the adjoining island where a lot of them live and swim over to Manresa?
Yeah, I mean, I know I'll maybe pass it to Jess from MIC to address the strategies that are in place, but there has been a wildlife management assessment done. And within the first phase of the Northern Forest design, we've incorporated a deer fence within the design. But that is not the only strategy for wildlife management. We've been working with eDesign Consultants, who's a ecologist consulting firm who's been advising on different deer management strategies for the site and for the greater area. I don't know, Jess, if you want to add to that.
Sorry, it was Jason IT name.
Deer, question about deer management on the site.
Yeah, and Gina referenced the,
Oh.
So one thing to add to the exclusionary deer fence proposed along Longshore, we're also containing the northern 28-acre North Forest, as well as probably another 20 acres to the south of it, fully controlled with deer fence as well. So the northern, more passive ecological restoration portion of the site will be fully enclosed with deer fence. So there'll be gates at the entrances to the trails and everything. So we'll be preserving and protecting that ecosystem the way it is. And then we've got a deer management strategy in place, probably with some amount of deer culling in the future to keep any population that shows up. It's the honest answer, yeah.
One of the, it would seem to me, one of the potential problems with that is given the volume of deer, you're going to be forcing them onto Village Creek. And I'm wondering if your plan includes anything that would permanently control the number of deer so that you're not just passing your problem on to another part of the community.
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner. We did, before breaking ground on the Phase 1 North Forest, we did do like a 2-month period of deer survey and culling. So we were able to analyze the amount of deer on site and then reduce the population to make sure that the construction did not force that offsite migration. So I think between exclusion and management of species, you know, the numbers that come on site, I think we'll do a good job.
Thank you.
Okay. I just want to make sure that the audio is working appropriately since we switched computers with the Zoom.
Sure.
For your commissioners that are online.
I see 2 thumbs up, so you're good.
The pointer doesn't work. But also you can just flip manually. Okay, so we can flip to the next slide. The next slide just begins to do like more of this walkthrough with these eye level renderings showing the different scales of experiences and the different welcoming moments of the project to the different audiences coming to visit and use the space. So this moment is showing the Arrival Plaza and Grove. This is meant to be a very welcoming space. It's where you both approach the park and approach the building. We've designed a large like grove of mixed species, but mostly birch trees, kind of reflecting this industrial heritage of the site that helps synthesize indoors and outdoors, provides a place to park your bike, provides a place to get oriented, and you can make a decision about, do you want to enter the building or do you want to enter the park below the admin building on this like unique approach up into the landscape that you can see on the left side of the screen. Next slide. This image shows the beach. You can see it's of modest scale. The goal here is to have a beach that feels really reflective of the community feedback that we heard at our public engagement sessions, a space where you can access and literally go swimming or get in the water, enjoy the greater sound as a member of the public, but also a space that has like mixed sand grains and gravel textures on the shore, diverse plantings, the shrub scramble behind, a pocket wetland adjacent, to have it really feel part of a natural environment that's kind of contextually appropriate for the greater Long Island Sound. Next slide. This is a view from the shrub scramble. So if you were standing in the pool pavilion area that Rita showed and you were walking down to the beach, this is the experience that you would have. This is very different than other local beaches where it's more of like a lawn and a parking experience and the beach directly there. This is more of a slow reveal, moving through this undulating dune system that's planted with species like native coastal rose and bayberry and pitch pine and other types of coastal species. Next slide. And this is a view of that larger like passive and recreational lawn space that could be used for larger events, but on an everyday basis is a more passive space for lingering, for lounging, for gathering, for playing pickup games of Frisbee, for enjoying a picnic with your family. It's meant to be a very multifunctional space that can relate back to the building. You can see a bit of grade change there, how we've lifted the landscape around the building and helping kind of protect it from sea level rise, but then how portions of the landscape are grading down and unfolding and getting closer to the water and designed in a more resilient manner. You also can see the native vegetation at the edges. It's really important for us that this is a multi-season destination. And so the building plays a big role in helping create and provide like warm program spaces for users throughout the winter. But we also have thought about how to design the lawn and many of these spaces to be very active and welcoming in the winter months as well. For example, using a portion of the slope along the lawn as a really fun sledding hill and making sure that certain paths throughout the landscape are plowed in the winter so there are walking paths and places to recreate throughout all months of the year. Next slide. Moving on to the eastern portion of the site, this is that other kind of unique water formation that helps shape the design, the existing deep water inlet or civic harbor, as we call it. We imagine there's some infrastructural repair to do along the edges as part of the site stabilization and remediation strategy. And so we're trying to take advantage of that need and bring people close to the water's edge. Have opportunities here for this small scale marina where people can bring a small boat and dock for a certain period of time under an operation strategy, get down closer to the water. Other vessels also could dock here. For example, Jess mentioned the many partners that are helping shape this vision. For example, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute could bring an element like a science barge or a research vessel to dock here and really be a learning station. Just off the screen is the ferry landing area to provide water-based transportation to the site. So this also could be a point of arrival for the project. The upper portion of the inlet, we're imagining as a kind of cordoned off protected space that would be for kayakers, especially for people like learning how to kayak who maybe lived in Norwalk their whole life, but never gotten on a kayak before or wanted to try a family kayaking adventure. You would go to the modest shade structure here, be able to grab a kayak and experiment and learn how to use the water in this protected space. So having protected water space that's publicly accessible is one of the huge assets of this portion of the site. It's also directly adjacent to the primary parking lot for the park, which you can see in the distance of that image. While it's a parking area, we're also planting it as a like bioswale and grove. So it would have a lot of tree cover and stormwater management potential embedded within it. And then to the left of the space, as well as to the right, we're thinking about different, very family-oriented park activities. We heard a lot in our public engagement sessions that there's real desire for unique play spaces within Norwalk, trying to move past the more standard types of play equipment that exists within the greater region and do something that's very unique and felt like nested on the site. So we have a more active play area to the left and a more, I guess still very active, but more nature focused, experimental, wild play area to the right of the image where children can like build forts with sticks and play in a large sand pit and really engage the materials of earth. Because I think too often we have playgrounds where children are just exposed to plastic. And I think here there's a real opportunity to bring natural materials back into the play experience.
To briefly interrupt you, I do see that one of our commissioners has his hand up for a question.
Oh, yes.
John, go ahead.
I don't know about anybody else, but I no longer see the screen share.
Oh, no.
Oh,
okay.
Goodness. Okay. It's coming through on my end on the iPad.
Actually, I can see it, so that's strange.
I can see it too.
If he's in gallery
Swipe
mode,
left.
you won't be able to see it. Like you might have to swipe to the left or the right. I forget which one it is.
Okay.
Oh, I've
John, I
got
don't
the
know if you-
Steve Kleppen screen tab selected. I noticed there's multiple tabs.
John, let us know when you have it. We can't hear
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Please
Okay.
continue. Yes.
Perfect. And we're happy to return to any images later. So this is the nature play zone. I mentioned the place for adventurous play. This is the opportunity to kind of get messy and get creative, and have spaces to like build small scale forts or get your hands on the sand or interact with other children that you meet in the play space and kind of build a new creation together. So we're very excited about the potential for this space, and we heard a lot. We did not only community feedback on the play spaces and the greater public meetings and outreach that was done, but also we went into Norwalk Public Schools and talked to students themselves about the kind of experiences they really wanted to see. We heard a lot about slides. Tall slides were very, very popular. And so you get tall slides, kind of climbing towers, like ability to kind of take a little bit of risk. And so we've incorporated these features into our more active play space, which is going to be using some really innovative play equipment and custom elements that are kind of built from the fabric of the site, and also still have it be a very planted environment and kind of feel a little bit separate from the greater area and building experience. So very excited about play. We've also woven a thread of water through the play as it's designed today to make sure there's multi-sensory experiences for children of different ages and abilities and kind of mindset. So we're excited about that. Next slide. And then moving to the north, I've already spoken a bit about the North Forest, but this is a really unique and special portion of the site. That's the piece that's being developed as we speak and already come before the Planning and Zoning Commission. But between the North Forest and the Wild Play Space, we have some really interesting, much more ecology-focused features. And so you can see on the right-hand side of the screen what we're proposing along this coastal edge. Today, this edge is like a harsh, it would be generous to call it riprap because it's actually a lot of rubble repurposed from the site, but it's a very harsh, hard edge. We would be remediating this edge, but we would also be kind of pulling the slope back, excavating the contaminated material and turning it into much more of a living shoreline experience. So really not just remediating it, but healing it over time and creating a living ecosystem that interacts with the edge of Norwalk Harbor. There's an existing pocket wetland that we would be expanding. There would be small scale like boardwalks and bridges kind of lacing through this area, and a series of constructed tidal edges, and we're calling them like tide pool types of zones that people can clamber down to the rocks and really witness and interact with the ecology of the water edge transition. To the left of that space, you see kind of like a bluish forested area. This is a unique feature on the site. It's kind of an impounded area that was part of that fly ash capping. And we are proposing to transform that specific space into a very unique coastal ecosystem, a white cedar swamp. This is an ecosystem that is in decline in the greater area, and we would be fully restoring it. And it's a very significant scale of ecosystem restoration for this type. And it really helps add diversity, and as part of the whole, it provides a fresh water source on the site to complement a lot of the saltwater habitats around. So it's a water source for birds and other species. It supports this unique white cedar tree, and it would grow in over time and be a really important ecological pocket within the greater site experiences. Directly adjacent to that space is the Urban Ecology Center that Chris mentioned, shown in the kind of white volume to the right, with the maintenance facility shown to the left. I neglected to mention the entrance road that ties back. It extends from where it's currently designed within the North Forest. It's lifted to be out of the floodplain, as it's a kind of critical access point for fire and life safety within the site itself. And it is pulled away from the western edge. So we're actually shifting it inland to have a bigger buffer to the western neighbors. And we're transforming the existing roadway, which you can see along the western edge there, which today holds cars, into a pedestrian and bicycle space with a modest boardwalk system that stitches through the wetlands that are on the site. And in response to community feedback, we fully pulled back There used to be a larger boardwalk system proposed, and we've pulled that back in response to community feedback, really limiting it to that boundary of the site and the existing vehicular space. So if you move to the next slide, these are just some of these moments. The White Cedar Swamp, I think, really expresses this desire and goal for this to be a hub for learning and outreach, a place for engagement for Norwalk Public School students to come here and learn from this unique assemblage of ecosystems. Next slide. This is a view of that living shoreline restoration, kind of opening up to the east to Greater Norwalk Harbor with a newly restored salt marsh in the foreground and a light touch boardwalk moving across it, with some of the existing forest and regenerated forest shown in the distance. This is a design move that directly emerged after the community feedback session, so they really have been helpful. And then I think one thing that's been really important in all of our outreach has been that the park is truly accessible to all, and that this is not a nature hike that you can't experience if you're in a wheelchair or pushing a stroller. And this element, the multimodal path, which forms a large loop around the whole site, ensures that anyone who comes here, no matter your age or ability, will be able to access all of the different programmed elements that we just shared with you today. So hopefully that kind of ties it together. I'm happy to answer any more questions. But I think it's also important that this project, while it's a very thoughtful vision the team has developed, it's also a thoughtful phasing strategy that's going to allow it to unfold over time and happen in phases that can be responsive to community feedback as well. Thank you. Chris will be speaking about phasing.
Gina. Commissioners, so I joined the team a year and a half ago, and luckily Austin and Allison had hired like the dream team of designers. So I've been spending a lot of time on phasing and how to build this park and deliver it to the community. So before I hand it over to Doug and then Michael with AKRF, I'm just going to give a little bit of framework of the phasing of the development and build out of the island, because it has direct connection and input to the traffic analysis that we've done to date and will continue to do into the future as we come back for future coastal site plan applications for the phases. So a total of 4 phases. This slide has phase 1 and phase 2. The next slide will have 3 and 4. Phase 1 on the left side is the Northern Forest, 28 acres, modest parking lot, restroom, and a network of trails and clearings. You guys have seen a lot about that. It's been approved. It's under construction. It's maybe 10-15% done, and we're hoping to open it up to the community middle of next year. So we got going on that right away. As you look over at phase 2, which for our planning purposes is A and B, but for everybody here, it is phase 2. It is everything in orange, and it really covers about 70% of the site. So it is the bulk of the park that we're planning on developing and delivering. The only portion that is not included in that broader 70% of the site landscape development is really the active play and the water connection berth portion. That entire area, which I'll cover in the next slide, is currently within the DOT walk bridge replacement projects jurisdiction. They have an easement on site for that area to help support with barging and loading out tower and bridge truss sections out to the bridge replacement project. So they are our neighbor for the next 4 or 5 years. As soon as they leave that portion of the site, we will infill that portion with the water access and active play. Phase 2 is a lot of work. It'll take us likely the next 2 to 3 years of design and permitting. And then 3 to 4 years of construction. So phase 2, we're looking to open that up to the public in 2032. A lot of work to get there. It covers the maintenance hub, the Cedar Swamp, the middle program that includes the wetland restoration, everything that Gina walked through in the middle and southern programs, the lawn, scrub scramble, beach, etc. And then for the main building active core at the power plant, that adaptive reuse that Rita walked through, it covers the turbine admin building and the pool deck, pool pavilion. So you'll see that the boiler building, the large structure that includes the vertical park and ocean lab, is not included in this phase. That'll be on the next slide. So phase 2 under design right now, and 2032 opening. Phase 3 and phase 4. Phase 3 is what I described. The area in orange is that DOT easement. And we're really excited about that phase because that connects it to water transportation and the coastal community in Norwalk in a very exciting way. And then it's that 3-acre playground that is really tough to find on this planet. The scale of what the team has dreamed up is just not, you can't find it in many places. It also included that kayak rental and a food and beverage pavilion, and then that kind of later ecology center. It's just going to take longer to get that built, so it's outside of the orange, but it's part of that phase. And then phase 4, phase 3, current assumptions with DOT Walkbridge completion date has us completing that phase 2033 to 2035. Depending on them leaving their easement. So everybody hope for that project going well, and we'll deliver phase 3. Phase 4 is exclusive to the boiler building. It is that big. It is that much square footage. It is that much of a programming opportunity. But our table of uses and opportunities that we're submitting for in the district really allow us to shape and mold that to react to the community's needs and deliver on what Norwalk needs. But that'll be the last and final phase of the project. I'm going to hand it off to Doug, who's going to do a little bit of framing from the phasing, moving into the traffic analysis work done to date. Thank you.
Traffic and zoning use table just gives me all the good stuff to do. So I'm just going to frame and then turn it over to our very qualified experts. We recognize the success of Manresa Wilds depends on being a good neighbor to the surrounding South Norwalk community. Some may disagree, but we're taking a measured and strategic approach to managing traffic. It isn't just about handling cars as they arrive at the gate. It's about a comprehensive approach that includes parking, multimodal transportation, the full gamut this site has access to on how visitation and transportation function as a whole. It's a large site, 125 acres, but by my experience, the visitation here is slightly less than the number of people that visit a typical suburban supermarket during the year. That's the general scale of it. It's important. It needs to be heavily managed, but we need to work through it. The special district is only the first step in a multi-step process. We want to be clear about the sequence. For the creation that we're proposing for the special district, AKRF has completed a detailed traffic strategy memorandum based on the master plan concept, project phasing, and visitation projections, which are different than your typical IT manuals because those don't really exist for a park like this. So we brought in, Jess and her team have brought in the foremost experts in that to help support this effort that's been working with AKRF. If the commission approves the district, we will finalize detailed site plan or applications for the phases 2 and 3 that Chris talked about. And we will spend the next year collaborating with planning and zoning, city's TMP department on a rigorous traffic study and parking plan that will be part of that approval submission underneath the zoning BSD special district. Tonight is not about approval to build, but we do have done a lot of work on traffic, and I want to turn it over to Mike. There you are, to tell us.
Thanks, Doug. Next slide. For the record, Mike Beatty, Senior Vice President with AKRF. As Doug mentioned, the strategy memo you have in front of you was more of a look at the master plan itself based on potential land uses. What I think we're here for tonight is to get a sense of, based on that, what does that visitation look like, both annually, but then how do we break it down to that peak hour that people experience day by day, hour by hour? And then based on that visitation, what does that translate into number of vehicles, and those number of vehicles, what that does to your network? Next slide. So it starts with the visitation. As Doug mentioned, this is unique. Waterfront access that isn't in your typical trip generation sources. You may have heard people in the past talk about ITE trip generation manuals. Doesn't apply here. So for this case, the project team brought on a firm called Orca Consultant. They are a firm that specializes in visitation for these recreational uses. They've done work all over the country. In the Northeast, they've done trail work in New York. They've done stuff for the Newark Maritime Center. So they have a big database of what happens with these active spaces that are unique to certain areas. And so what they've done is they have their sort of database of sites around the country. They look at what's going on in terms of what's being proposed, the population density that they would pull from, the parking, and they come up with their estimate of how many people will come here on an annual basis. And so what you see in the table is that phase one, that Northern Forest, they're estimating 145,000 people in a year. And then really when that phase two comes online, that's the part that Chris talked about with the larger orange area. That's where you see that kind of jump in visitation up to 730,000 people. That's when the park is really active at that point. Following that, the phase three, which is a little bit smaller, will increase visitation to about 792,000 over the whole year. Next slide. And so what we want to do is take that number, which sounds like a really big number, and then start boiling it down to what happens on an hour for a number of vehicles coming in and out. So the first step is you try to figure out over the year how people are coming in month by month. And so based on the table you see in front of you, obviously in the summer is a big time for visitors to come to the site. So you see 15% of the annual population coming in July and in August. During those non-summer months, like September in the fall, 12%, in the spring, 11%. And then towards the winter end, it sort of tails off. We take those monthly estimates and the next we convert them to daily estimates. So that's the next slide. We assume 4 weeks per month. And then what we do is similar to what we did with the months per year, we apply 8% based on day of the week. So we look at for the day of the week, during the weekend, half that visitation is expected to show up. And then throughout the rest of the week, the remainder is kind of distributed throughout that Monday through Friday. So when you apply these factors, what we would be estimating is that on a Saturday in the summer, which would be the highest, we're looking at about in a day, 7,400 people coming to Manresa. Compare that to, let's say, a Wednesday in the fall when schools are in session, that drops to about 2,300. So really that peak time is during those summer months and that summer weekend. Next slide. And so when you have that daily number, the question is, well, how do people arrive to the site? And what's important to know is that it sounds like 7,000 people come to the site is a lot, and that's quite a few number of people. It's not like a residential or office park where everyone comes in at once, everyone leaves at once. So it's not this influx of 7,000 people at one time and everyone leaving at 7,000 people at one time. What you see is actually a distribution throughout the day that starts to ramp up in the late morning, levels off throughout the day, and then starts to drop off. So you're really taking that number and you're spreading it out over the day versus a very concentrated, everyone coming in at once, everyone leaving at once. So we took that daily number, applied these arrival patterns to get a sense of how many people are arriving and how many people departing each hour. And then from that, that's just the number of people. We want to figure out how they get to the site. So that's where we start talking about modal splits, whether it's a vehicle, whether it's transit, whether it's walking. That's the next step. So if we go to the next slide. And it's been mentioned already, but just to kind of reiterate, there's a lot of great transit options to the site beyond just driving. And actually, as the site builds out, more of those come online. So we've talked about Norwalk Route 2, the bus line that currently goes from South Norwalk train station down to Dock Road. That could easily be extended into the project site with little infrastructure costs. And now you have a transit link from Metro North directly into the site. You have opportunities to improve the bicycle access, especially on Woodward Avenue. There's opportunity for events to actually do off-site parking and shuttle people in. And then especially as you get to like the phase 3, where you start activating the dock and the ferry terminals, you actually start bringing people in through boat. So there's a lot of different options here to get people to Manresa. I can go to the next slide. And what's key is, as this goes forward, is really to incentivize those other modes of transportation. What's great is Manresa will have control over parking. So the number of parking that's available, the reservation system, whether they want to do dynamic pricing or not, they really can control how many people can drive into the site. For that to happen, you have to give people options. And so those options are, as we talked about, extending that route to bus line, identifying opportunities to enhance bicycle access, the ferry in phase 3, opening the dock to allow kayaking or ferry boats to come in. And there's always been discussions about also like a circulator bus, water taxi. Those are all items that will probably reduce the number of vehicles coming to the site and give people access to come to Manresa. For the strategy memo, despite all those options, we went very conservative and we just said 95% of the people will drive. So despite all those options that are available, we just said for this larger picture, let's just see what happens. 95% of the people will come to the site. With that assumption, next slide. What we're saying is that, and I highlighted a few numbers here, on a Saturday in the summer, we would expect 586 vehicle trips, 307 vehicles coming in, 279 vehicles coming out during a peak hour during the summer. During the non-summer times, so when schools are in session, when people have their normal kind of work schedule, on a fall weekend, that drops to 180 vehicles. That's a combination of in and out. Midday, 154 vehicles in and out. And again, that's assuming that 95% of the people are to be driving to Manresa. We took those numbers, so that 586, and what we did is we distributed them onto the network to get a sense of what would happen to intersections if that level of traffic came to fruition. Next slide. And so what we looked at was, we looked at a 10-mile radius and looked at the population densities just to get a sense of where you're drawing people from, and then figuring out what routes would people likely take if they're driving to and from the site. And so you can see actually coming in and out is slightly different, where based on, if you look at typical traffic patterns, people coming to the site, most of them are coming from 95 down South Main Street, down Woodward. Leaving the site, they may actually go towards the Royalton neighborhood to get back to 95. So that was an assumption that we started with to say those 586 cars, that's how they would access the network. When you did that and we compared to the intersections without those volumes, the level of service, which is how we grade intersections, didn't degrade from acceptable to unacceptable, except for a few locations, one being at the Woodward Avenue, Meadow Avenue intersection. Today that's signalized. There's potential that would have to be signalized in the future. And then along South Main Street, there's a couple other places that they're already signalized, may require some signal timing adjustments, but that's not really a big lift in terms of the traffic world. But based on going through phase 3, that's what we're seeing as what could happen based on those peak hour volumes. Next slide. Chris did mention about a phase 4, and that's still even more conceptual than what we've done for phase 2 and phase 3. So I just wanted to at least address qualitatively what could happen. Based on Orca looking at potential land uses for what could be done there, you look at maybe another 10% increase in annual visitation. So generally what that would mean is potentially another intersection be signalized, some more signalization improvements. But really at this point, that's so far from the future that it's almost important to get through phase 2 and 3, test through what the visitation is actually coming to fruition. And you can actually scale what happens in phase 4 based on what's happening in phase 2 and phase 3. If we underestimated it, you could scale down phase 4. If we overestimated it, there's room to maybe do something a little more impactful for phase 4. So that's something that would come later. And so the study they have in front of you really focuses on through that phase 3 that we have a little bit better of an idea of what's going to happen. In terms of next steps, sorry, next slide. So again, what you have in front of you is more for this master plan to understand these potential land uses that have permitted what the program could look like. Assuming these were land uses that were acceptable, over the next 6 to 9 months, we'd really be looking to dial in on what that program is for phase 2 and phase 3, and working closely with TMP and their consultant, developing a more detailed traffic impact study that one really hones in on the program that's being proposed and the estimates that are associated with that program, And then expanding the study area. What we looked at in the strategy memo was a pretty tight area based on available data. We'd actually expand this to a pretty large study of 29 intersections, all new traffic counts. Some are actually going on right now. We're going to do traffic counts in the summer to really get a true new base of what's out there today. Once we get the detail of the phase 2, phase 3 program, we work with TMP to actually develop that detailed traffic impact study. And those would accompany future land use applications as they come forward. So the counts are going on. We'll be looking at traffic calming options along Ward Avenue. So it's all stuff that, again, we're coordinating pretty closely with TMP on those next steps. And so really what you have in front of you is just a base of potential what could be and how that translates to traffic. I'll turn over to Liz.
Yeah, I have a general question, Liz. Usually when an applicant comes before us, the traffic issues have generally been worked out. Here, what you're asking us for what appears to be a very thoughtful, engaging, and exciting plan is to approve it before we have all the information on whether there are reasonable solutions to questions about traffic throughout this area. I've seen what TMP has already raised questions about, and I'm sure they'll have many more. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Basically asking us to approve a project before we know everything, or before we know a lot more about traffic impacts and traffic solutions.
Mr. Schulman, that's an excellent question. And it's something that we haven't ignored or have not struggled with. However, the crux of this issue is we don't know which of the uses that we have suggested in this SDMW zone are uses that you will say are appropriate. As part of this process, your role and task is to then evaluate what we've suggested and said, well, maybe 1, 2, 5, 6 uses you deem inappropriate. It's difficult for us then, without having that knowledge and without having that framework, to develop a traffic plan to the extent that you're used to seeing with traffic counts and levels of service and mitigation, if we don't know what that framework is. I think the comments that TMP provided to us, which we discussed with them and which ACARF is aware of, those will all be part of the more in-depth traffic analysis that we're obligated to provide, that we will provide when we're obligated to come back to you with the next phase, with the special permit application for special permit uses that you deem appropriate and you approve as part of the table of uses. For a coastal site plan application, the same thing. And if there are uses that typically don't require a traffic study, you have within your power to say, considering what you're doing, we want you to do it to this point. But at this phase, it's difficult for us to say, to undertake an entire traffic analysis of all of the uses in that table of uses when we don't know which ones you will allow us to have and which ones we intend to move forward with in phase 2 or phase 3. So that's the dilemma we face as well, but we're not unaware or ignoring the fact that TMP and others have the same concerns that you have. We have them as well. In order to have a park that functions, we have to have a park that functions from a traffic perspective and a parking perspective and how that all works. So we're asking you to move this forward so we know what we can do. If we don't know that, then we can't give you the adequate traffic analysis that you're expecting and that we would definitely want to provide. I hope that answers the question.
Well, I think it answers as best you can, given what you know
right
at the moment.
Right.
Just if I could, please, one more question. I want to make it clear that we are not allowed to consider any response you give to the question I'm going to ask in considering this, what you're asking for. However, I think that if you can answer it in the most general way, it may be of some importance to the community. And that is in the pro formas, the financial pro formas that you've initially put together. will you be able to assure the city that you can cover both the operating and capital expenses of this program going forward well into the future, based on what you're proposing?
I think Jess is best able to answer that question.
And I'm not, understand, I'm not asking for that pro forma. We're not allowed to consider it.
Jess, you want me to take it?
I can take it and then you can add on if you'd like. Thanks to Allison and Austin McCord. So we've talked a lot about this, and I can't speak for Austin and Allison, but I can speak for what we've talked about from an organizational standpoint and just showcase to you some of the due diligence that we've been doing in order to be able to understand not only what is required to design and construct the project, but also how to maintain the project at a quality level that the city deserves. One of the things that we've been doing is talking not only to different organizations in and around the city and understanding how they function. We've actually had an opportunity to go to the Gathering Place in Tulsa. We've gone to the Seattle waterfront. We've gone to Tom Lee Park in Memphis. We've gone to Governor's Island, Little Island, Brooklyn Bridge Park, and have connections with Toronto as well, with the brickworks up there. And what we've done is we've met with all of the teams, literally our counterpart. We've gone to the parks. We've introduced ourselves, we've sat down, we've looked at their operating budgets, we've looked at their capital budgets, we've understood when CapEx needs to come in, we've understood how park revenue happens and how that grows over time. We've also met directly with our counterparts to understand what works in coastal parks, what doesn't work in coastal parks, what gravel to use, how to keep things where they need to be, how to build a berth that functions for people. And we've been spending over a year and a half doing that in order to be able to not only think about how Manresa can serve the community here, but also the responsibility of how to actually protect a park and have a park function over time. We've learned a lot about that. We've actually built out some preliminary budgets just based on if the district use table was to move forward with the uses that are there, to be able to understand what line items are required. We've been working with HRNA, which is an economic development firm that helps to actually model all of those things. And with that information, we've been able to then go to Allison and Austin and speak to them, not only about the cost for the construction of the park, but also in addition, what an endowment would require. We do have a chief of strategic partnerships on our team. That was maybe the third or fourth person that we brought on. And they previously have worked with Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty Foundation, doing building networking and building strategic partners. We know and have heard that Manresa Wilds isn't just the McCord's park, it's the community's park. And being able to do that means being able to open up the doors to not only volunteers who we have over 50 of, but also donors that would like to make donations to that. So Austin will speak, but from our standpoint, as far as an operating organization from a nonprofit status, we've been doing all that we can in order to be able to not only understand what those questions are, but plan appropriately for them and have those discussions with our donors.
We are very aware of how much it's going to cost to operate, would be the way to sum up what Jess said more eloquently. But I think the component there is also that the usage fees, so revenue generated from renting a kayak or somebody, getting an oyster at an oyster shack or somebody paying to park, will not begin to scratch the surface of the operating costs of a park of this scale. And so it requires an endowment in order to function. And that is something that Allison and I are absolutely committed to delivering upon, to ensure that this park will be successful in the future. And I don't believe that, any of our esteemed partners, frankly, would work with us if they didn't, make sure that we also understood that and were committed to that in delivering this for generations to come.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm like to ask you to call for recess.
Okay.
But I have some questions. They finished the presentation. I've got some questions. I'm sure other commissioners.
Do you have more of your presentation?
No.
Okay. Well, let's take a recess for 10 minutes. The current time is 8:30, so we will resume at 8:40. All right, we are going to resume the meeting for the Norwalk Planning and Zoning Commission on June 24th. I actually do see that Attorney Sechi seems to be out of the room, so I don't know if we should give her a, oh, perfect, perfect timing. So we are going to resume. At this time, if the applicant has more that they would like to present, feel free. Otherwise, I will turn it to commissioner questions that they have for the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, at this point, we don't have anything else to present as for our case in chief. We look forward to questions from the commission. Happy to answer them. Please feel free to ask anything. We're all here. And also moving forward, if you have questions that you don't ask tonight, feel free to share them with staff, and staff's been always been very good at sharing them with us, and we'll get responses to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Are there questions? Go ahead, Anne.
I had a follow-up to Lou's first question, not the financial one, the traffic study question. And as usual, I'm not sure who this is to, maybe Steve, maybe Attorney Sechi, but just to recap what I think I heard in Attorney Sechi's answer is that we don't need to base our decision, like we're making decisions tonight on whether we're going to allow or not allow certain uses for this proposed zone. And we don't need to have a full traffic study to decide whether we want to allow a use, because we can decide a certain use is not a good idea for like any number of reasons in general. And then once they know what uses are theoretically allowed, they do a traffic study based on that use, and we can decide that even though the use is allowed in the zone, and they're the only people in the zone, that their study of how that use would work, we don't like it anymore. And the fact that we allowed that use doesn't mean that we can't deny it later once we see the real traffic study. Is that like?
Sort of.
Okay.
So we actually at staff level had a meeting today with the applicant's traffic team, and that was a large crux of the conversation was about phasing and approval process, and how do we ensure that what we say we think is good is not going to be a problem later on with, because there is, and no one was trying to hide anything about details missing or anything. It's just some of it is unknown at this point. So I think there is a way where the master plan via special permit gets approved, and then additional phasing down the road is subject to that additional traffic information. So you're giving the applicant the assurance that you're, and I'm not assuming you're voting in favor or negative, but if you did vote in favor, you're giving them the assurance that they can move forward with the next phasing or planning of the next phase, but that you have the ability to say, all right, based on this new information, the traffic counts they're doing now and continuing through the summer, that the data from that will inform whether the extent of phase 2 as proposed or phase 3 as proposed will be problematic, or there are going to be mitigation measures necessary. So I think we can structure the approval to give you comfort and the neighbors comfort that whatever gets approved and proposed is not going to be detrimental to traffic in that area.
So then is it more like approving a use today is saying theoretically a hot tub might work here. We're not against it entirely, but we need to see the specifics of the hot tub. And if you bring us specifics of the hot tub that are like not cool, we can say no. And I want a hot tub.
Yes, I think that in essence, I think we can come up with a path that you say, all right, theoretically, we think these uses could work. However, we are not committing 100% to each one of these uses without knowing in more detail what the total traffic impacts are based on the initial traffic analysis done, plus the broader, more specific data that we're collecting now. And then if that data shows that the I believe the traffic consultant mentioned, maybe there's a traffic light needed at this intersection. If that proves not to be sufficient and there is no other mitigation, then at that point, okay, you either come up with an alternate to fix that issue or it cannot be approved. So I think that's where how we structure the condition of approval or modify the text as proposed will give everybody that comfort level. When I say everybody, I'm saying the applicant team and the applicant as well as city and neighbors.
Okay, because it would also be not a good use of their time to do a bunch of stuff on a use that we have no intention of ever even theoretically.
And that's within your purview to say, we think this hot tub is a bad idea. No,
I would never.
To build off that, if I may, my understanding is that if there are uses where we don't foresee a like traffic issue, for example, or we don't really have any concerns with, we can make that permitted or permitted with limitations. But if we are worried about the traffic uses, that's where we either do the permitted with limitations or a special permit in order to like have those conditions we could adjudicate on, right?
That's 100% within your purview.
Okay. So, did you have a second part? Sorry.
No, that was it.
You. Okay. Doug, did you?
Oh, yeah.
Please go.
First, I have a staff request.
Sure.
There's a couple of us are fairly new. Could we get a copy of what was approved phase one? Because I'm not aware of that. I'd like it's for background.
I can send you the link. I don't have hard copies to give you. Sorry.
Well, that's my next class.
Yeah, we typically
I'm old fashioned. I don't like writing the margins and mark things up.
Yeah,
So I mean, if I at least get a singular site plan half size or 11 by 17.
I can do that. 1117 is.
Just something, and whatever the conditions of the application were.
Sure.
And can I also get a copy of what was presented?
I have one of those for you. I'm
Okay.
working on your other.
But I think there's probably another new person here who would probably appreciate some of that.
Oh, I'm loading.
Yeah. So at that point, and if I could ask the applicant to please get us, so, just have my little presentation.
I have one copy for you here.
Okay. Well, you knew what was coming, huh? Okay. That's scary.
I also have a question for you folks as well. We talked a lot about inclusivity for everyone, and I love that the most. Now, one thing that I would like to see going forward, or however, still on that inclusivity level, all neutral bathrooms. I think now in a time where we are, we just need to be more seen as far as everybody in total. So that's one request, or kind of like, I don't know, thing. Secondly, too, young professionals. Now, we talked about the brewery that I've seen up top. I've seen a movie theater. However, do you guys think or plan for something that specifically has the young professional generation? Or is that just spread throughout?
Yeah. So I think the answer is yes, absolutely. The great thing about this particular project is that not only do we have the landscape, but we also have the building in order to be able to do the year-round programming. And so one of the things we're looking forward to is working out what is allowed in the district through this district creation in order to be able to understand how the spaces can be designed and constructed to be able to do exactly what you're talking about. So we've talked a lot about how to support different school groups and education groups and different academia and things like that. But we've also been around to all of these different atmospheres, environments to be able to see who's using them and who's not using them and different groups that are there. And so the answer is absolutely yes. We've been looking at like the Silent Book Club, and we've been looking at these networking events, and we've been looking at how to like activate a cafe for after work hours. And I know Norwalk has been doing a really neat thing where it's like new people to the city can meet and have a coffee with one another and meet each other. So we've been looking at all of these different types. One of the things that we're most excited about is to understand how the building and how the landscape comes together, partly through this district application, in order to be able to understand how the programming and activation can happen on site.
Sweet.
Jay, if you don't mind, do you mind if we jump back to Doug? I think he.
No, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Jay.
Okay, and then lastly, we talked about transportation. would be great as well is to seeing like a local bus that'll stop by every 30 minutes or every 20 minutes. So that way you can see everybody at all kinds of the days or the nights or however else.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the Norwalk Transit District, but I did speak with Matt Pence just last week and let him know that we're coming in to planning and zoning to talk with you all. And Matt's sentiment was that the transit district is actually pretty excited about Manresa Wilds. One, it helps to serve their mission, which is to be able to increase ridership, and so they were excited about that. We noted in one of the comprehensive operational analyses that they had completed not too long ago that they looked at extending Route 2 to adopt a Manresa Wilds bus stop at our site. In part, what we've done through Northern Forest, which was approved on February the 4th, was to actually incorporate a turnaround at the gate of Manresa Wilds, not only for people that are coming to the park who want to turn around, but also to allow for the Norwalk Transit District to adopt a brand new bus stop in which we've been planning a bus shelter to be able to go there. And so part of the configuration of the Northern Forest design and what we're constructing is actually to be able to support that bus stop.
Sweet.
Chris,
Thank you.
Could you stop share on the?
Yes.
On the screen? Good, okay, there you go. Just to put something to rest a little bit, I've heard it mentioned a couple of times. It was said that you can put 150 single family homes on this property. That was one of the first things that was looked at. They weren't doing it, but you're trying to analyze it. That if by code, right now, that's what you could build on that site. But is that on areas that would have to be remediated? Unless I heard wrong. I thought that
So,
was...
yeah, housing or residential has never been a part of the Manresa Wilds application in any way, shape, or form. What did happen was Argent Ventures, a completely separate organization, a real estate developer out of New York and New Jersey, was going through the purchase of the site. And at the time, I believe, Steve would know better than I would, but I think at the time that the city was looking at rezoning, there was some language that went in from Argent Ventures to look at zoning for Manresa Wild or for Manresa Island, but that was left over from a previous owner, and Manresa Island Corp is now the owner of Manresa Island. There's never been residential that we've looked at for the property, and we've actually never considered modeling residential, nor have we looked at any of the financials that would go along with that either.
It's about an overlay, and I interpreted that somebody had actually tried to figure out how many houses would fit on it. And if so, then I'm wondering if that's in all the ash pits that are out there and you'd have to remediate to build a house. That's what I'm just
Sure. Austin can speak to it.
Understand. In other words, that really.
So plans were drawn up for a lot of housing there, and we have initial sketches of all of that as part of the data room when we purchased the property from Argent Ventures. If that's interesting, we could probably share it with you. But yes.
No, I'm just curious about the area it was being built on. Were those areas that had to be remediated before you build out?
The vast majority of it was targeted towards the 25 acres of like the original island, which had coal storage instead of coal ash. But then it extended back pretty far.
Thank you. That's it.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Smokestack. Why keeping it? The site has got a cell tower. Sure. Just because since I've been a kid, I was born here too, going way back, when that thing was built.
I think we like to stack. There's no active cell tower on the smokestack, and it's unlikely that one would be built on the smokestack. If one was to be added to the site, it almost certainly would be attached to the building itself.
Does it have a life expectancy though?
The smokestack is in good physical condition right now. And we are maintaining the smokestack, not putting stuff through it. It's capped at the top. So there's no water ingress into it. And we have obligations with the FAA to maintain the lighting system there. And we've been involved in doing that.
I do have some concerns, as Mr. Commissioner Schumer has also expressed, and it's kind of weird. So can I ask the applicant for a timeline that shows your zoning process and also going through phase 1, 2, and 3, and along that timeline, for construction, and then the timeline that you would need, that you're associating the traffic studies to, where does that fall in place? And I've never experienced, I did 3 years in zoning, but even with the city stuff. Am I getting this understanding that you're saying, well, if we don't like this or we don't like that, that we're supposed to look at what you're applying for each one of these buildings and its purposes and saying we don't like this and we don't like that? I'm trying to grasp what you were saying. You were saying, that's what I heard. That's what I heard. If I heard wrong, then please tell me, but I was hearing about, since you're going for an application for that, the language in there is we don't like this, we don't like that. And my simple ask would then, can you give me a traffic study? So if we don't do building B, how many parking spaces do you lose and how much traffic count you got coming in?
Yeah.
How do you base a, I mean, then we're gonna have to, I know, very, very good analogy. I don't like hospitals, well, this one's, I don't like research centers. I don't know. I mean, you know.
I think for a use, whether or not we want to see a use is something we should adjudicate as part of this application. As far as the application of that use, so to keep using a hot tub analogy, if the hot tub has too much traffic, then we would make a decision, but it wouldn't be based on whether or not we want a hot tub there. I want to find a different example.
Giving us traffic count to make that.
But they would at the time that they bring that in front of us, right? So today we're just looking at whether or not we think those uses are compatible, and not necessarily what their specific implementation looks like. And when they bring forward the specific of the site plan and how it's going to be laid out, what they expect for traffic counts, that's when we would see, is this size of a hot tub or whatever, like the right for the site, and are there sufficient offsite improvements or mitigations in place to handle the traffic issues that are at play? But I do want to let the applicant answer this as well, so I'm trying to parse that.
I'm the single least qualified person in the room to answer this question, but I will share at least, I think our assumption is that we're seeking to understand what's possible on the site, which is what the zoning overlay is. Or sorry, not zoning over this district. From there, we'll need to come back for anything which we want to build on the site. And that's where the traffic component will come into play, because, you know, you decide the scale and all the other impacts associated with it. But first we need to know what's possible.
I think another way to think about it is, if you just look at the use table and go through and see what they're proposing, there are some that, you know, we've already flagged that staff has questioned, like jumped out, like an amphitheater, okay. Or an event space that could hold a lot of people. What does that mean? They did propose some constraints around that, but you have the ability to cap that as part of your approval, or say, we don't feel an event space over X size is appropriate based on concerns about traffic and what that would mean for intersection X or impacts on the neighborhood. So you have the ability to filter that and put parameters around it, or say no to any one of those if you feel that it's inappropriate or just out of scale for what the neighborhood can handle.
Could we pull up on the share, the SDMW district text ART 47, page 15?
Who's got first reading?
So they've done like a mock-up, or I don't know, Steve, I don't know if somebody did this, but they did like a mock-up of what our use table would look like.
You want their draft regulation?
Yeah, if we adopted their zoning amendment request. And so you can see like permitted, not permitted, permitted with limitations, and like they've got just a full-on permitted for event space. And we could decide that's not cool, even though we haven't seen the exact traffic counts for event space.
Right.
Yep. And we can make that decision, and then we can still see the traffic counts later.
Yep.
Right, like that's what they're asking us to do, I think, is to like go through these uses.
Yep. And for event space, we may want to consider that as a special permit use, right? Yeah, exactly. Sorry if I'm restating what you said.
No, but I mean,
yeah,
thinking about recent things and all sorts of like.
Absolutely. As a quick note, I just want to confirm that this has also been submitted to the record. This is brand new information. So just for those who.
I'm sorry, Anna, what page?
It was page 15. I mean, I think this will be, I was just saying that it might help.
Just the use table.
To see that particular page, and like that's they've got this column on all the way on the right. That's like new. That column doesn't exist because that zone or that district doesn't currently exist, right? They're saying we want to make this thing and this is what we think it would look like. And we're saying, looks great, looks bad, this is good, this is not great.
So this is page 15.
Page 50, I mean, it might be a couple pages, but I was looking at 15. I find that visually that makes this whole thing make a little more sense.
So one of the dilemmas is if, you know, one of the commissioners says, I'd like you to see a traffic report, but these three uses excluded. And then another commissioner says, okay, but I don't sure about this one yet, and this maybe should be special permit. All discussions should happen, but to iterate those traffics to us is sort of, to be blunt, a wasted time and effort. We'd rather say, look, let's decide what uses make sense here. Let's decide which ones require additional special permit, et cetera. And we're committed to overall that as we move forward phases, coming back with, you know, meeting recommendations of TMP, et cetera, that we would work out together over the next year. And that's a process. Then once we have it, we can bring a plan forward that fits under that and say, here's what we're proposing. Here's the study that goes with it. And that's what we'd like you to consider. Because otherwise, we've done it ourselves where we sit in a room for 2 hours and say, what if we did this and that? And we just eventually just start churning butter. So that's the sort of what we've been trying to work with Steve as a set of conditions, if it's approved, the conditions that would make sure that the commission and the cities, that they're not going to get backed into something they didn't expect, right?
Does that address her? You know, convoluted way. I'm sorry, I'm a little more simple with. Okay. No, they're not gonna, when have you done an I assume you've done a financial analysis of, we expect over a year period, X amount of people launching kayaks. And that gets you a fee, right? I heard it's a fee to launch kayaks from there. Am I got that right? So the question is how many, you know,
the analysis component is more that we would pick a local vendor, which would choose to run a kayak rental service, as we don't want to run a kayak rental service. We may charge them rent or access to the site in some way. Whether no one comes to the site or the site is full all day, every day, the revenue generation delta there is like maybe 10 to 15% of the total budget. So it's not a huge number.
Right.
That's correct. I think that the most complex thing for us is ensuring that there's enough visitation for the food service vendors to survive. So if we ask like a Norm's Oysters to open a pop-up there, will enough people be there that restaurant will live? And that's probably the single most complicated thing with the revenue generation on the site.
Is there a fee to enter the park?
If you don't take a car, no. So there's parking fee proposed, okay. But if you were to arrive by bike, by shuttle, by foot, all of those would be free. We are looking to do everything that we can to try to prove that 95% by car number that AKRF is choosing wrong. And we're looking to incentivize any way of travel that is not to take your personal vehicle and come park on site.
It may help, I'm just throwing this out there, that wherever you're asking cars to come in and pay, all right, however they pay, show that on the site plan with that collection.
So
that's the point of
we would almost certainly, the plan is to use a reservation system so that people would pay in advance of arriving on the site. And we would make that clear any way that we can before people arrive at the site. That's the least efficient way for someone to arrive. And as far as the fees, we're seeking to try to make every cost as low as possible because we know we can gate and control cars by, like, if I charge $200 a car, less people will come, but that will not meet our mission of being an island for all. And so we're trying to be creative, and this is where sort of having a parking system where people are paying in advance allows us to be more dynamic with a lot of those components.
But if I don't know that I show up with a car, what happens? I go away.
If we're full, yeah, you go away. I mean, ideally, you would see a sign beforehand that would tell you that we're full. That there'd be digital signage before you even reach the place. And we've talked to the city about potential locations for that, and like there's positive reception.
Would it be appropriate to start asking questions about any of the specific uses?
I think so. Most of my questions are very specific, so
Okay.
I don't know if others have like higher level questions they want to ask first, but.
Is that substation permanent? Just,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, it is.
Is that pulling power from Long Island? Is that what it is?
It's the hub between New York and the rest of New England. It's owned by Eversource and operated by Eversource.
Where are they pulling the electric out?
It's just a transmission.
It's
Oh, okay.
it's a hub. It's a connection hub.
That used to have a cable connected to Long
Still
Island.
does. Still does.
Did they actually we thought more electricity went out than went in?
It
No.
goes to northern part of New York.
Yeah. Do you have on the new building square footage and the existing building square footage broken out? Is that a chart that shows what the total is by chance?
We have the structure slide that we showed to you, but again, based on district uses that you go through and you identify what uses you would like to see, a lot of these questions will be addressing based on what we have the ability and the approval to be able to move forward with.
But you have it on your plans, correct?
Correct.
So do you have it in a chart form?
That's correct.
Okay.
I do.
I haven't seen the app, none of us seen the app.
That's okay.
Yep, it's
and
not
we
the
can-
presentation. Yep.
And Commissioner Hemsworth-
Sorry.
It's all good. Yep.
We're taking note of all of the things that you would like to see, so we took note of the timeline that you had
Right.
commented on prior and the chart. And so this is information we have and we can provide it to you as a follow-up.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
One tiny note on the building thing. It would be most valuable for you to look at the building footprint. Because the existing building square footage is not a great analog because the existing building doesn't have floors in the way that you would think about it.
Sure. I do see that Galen has her hand up. Galen, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Maybe I'm way behind the thing, but aren't we doing tonight what we did with the site behind Merit 7, the big BLT site, where we approved the site and the site uses, and then they come back to us when they build a building, and we have to approve the building. So approving the site doesn't mean we've approved any building on the site. So
Caitlin, you're absolutely right. I remember that at one point, for one of the buildings, we said that there needed to be a walking path down to Route 7. And we would not approve another building until that was constructed. So you're absolutely right.
It's the same thing here. So we're wasting our time talking about exactly what will happen here, exactly what will happen there. We're talking about an overall concept now and approving a district now.
Right. Yes, and focus on what uses we want to see and what conditions on those uses.
Yes, essentially. And so
Yeah.
it's wasted time to do anything further than that. And it's already like I'm 15.
Thanks for keeping time, Galen. Anna, did you have
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a pain about the time, but wasted time is annoying.
I appreciate that. We have had quite a few late meetings recently. Anna, I think you had some questions.
Bed and breakfast, hotel, inn and lodge are proposed as a special permit. My first thought is like, maybe not a great idea at all. Can you speak to why you think they should be a theoretical special permit use for this district?
Yeah, those overnight uses that you mentioned one, are not in our conceptual site plan, but we did hear sort of two sides to that through the process. There were a number of community members that thought this might be a very good place for that at some point in the future. And there's some people that don't like that use. We think potentially over the next X number of years that it might be a good site, but we acknowledge, and certainly staff was of this mind, that would be a special use permit that would require us to come back, make a specific proposal, have a traffic, you would have the right to ask for all the information and make the decision, including, I think, Steve, the city has at time commissioned a market study to see if it's justified or whatnot. So we acknowledge that it's not permitted, it would require us to come back under a special use permit for that. And part of that is our thinking long-term for the site, but also some feedback we heard from the greater Norwalk community about what may make sense down there in the future.
I'll add, Anna, that if we don't see it as a fit, it doesn't preclude someone from bringing it to us in the future if they so desire. Yep. Do you have others you'd like to talk through?
No,
Oh, okay.
I want to let other people bring up their other.
Sure. Do other people have questions for the applicant? All right, I have one which was going back to the traffic and visitation side. You know, I'm curious, in the initial studies you guys have put together. First of all, I appreciate the conservative vehicular estimate that you're using there to help us really understand like what a worst case scenario really looked like. I'm curious if you have a sense of what reasonable is, and I ask that just to kind of gauge like what baseline you were expecting, and then how you went to that conservative estimate, just to understand that a little bit better. And I understand these are early estimates and an actual traffic count right now. So
I think because of the questions on the air, like we know we're talking with Norwalk Transit.
Sure.
We anticipate that route being extended. Until that's definitive, I don't want to assume that.
Sure.
So between that, the ferries, starting with phase 3, those are things that could probably lower your, and bicycling could lower your modal split by sometimes 10 to 15%.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say that I expect 10% of the people driving and 90% of the people not to drive.
Sure.
But I think because while those are reasonable to assume those are going to occur, at this point, we didn't want to assume that. And again, we also have a mechanism through parking to actually really tailor who can come to the site. So you actually have two powerful ways of actually making it lower. And two of those were definitive. We just said, no, let's just say master plan, 95% of people drive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And as a follow-up that's somewhat related, how long do you expect folks to spend or dwell on this site? You know, in the charts I saw with arrivals and departures, it was hard for me to kind of gauge how long you expect someone to actually be on the site.
It changes. I think just for phase 1, the North Forest, I think it was like a 30 minutes to an hour. But once you get to phase 2, phase 3, you're looking at typically, I believe Orca was estimating somewhere between like the 2 to 3 hour mark.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. Sure. Event space might do something different, but this typically that's what they would do. And also the expectation that it's not a new visitor every time. These are sometimes repeat visitors. So they'll do something one time, there's something another time. But that's kind of the estimate that we use around the 2 to 3 hour mark once phase 2 and phase 3 are online.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Harvey, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah, it looks like amphitheater is permitted with limitations in the proposed use table. Could you talk about those proposed limitations and why not special permit for amphitheater?
Yeah, part of it is that the North Forest that was already approved includes a learn pocket that includes an amphitheater in it with benches, etc. So we didn't want to put a district in place that conflicted with something that was just recently approved. So we felt it was appropriate to take something and put it as permitted, but with a limitation that we could have an amphitheater for up to 150 people as part of that. Anything more than that would require, I believe, a special permit or whatever that next requirement. Site plan, excuse me.
And then are there, if you did put an amphitheater elsewhere on the site, like would there be limitations on the orientation of it or the hours of operation or the use of amplification in it?
Couple of things. We'd have to comply with all noise ordinances. We'd have to comply with any other restrictions that are in place citywide or as part of the district. And that could be an additional limitation if the commission so chose.
Let me just follow up on that. Commissioner Jones, as part of your process, even though we have suggested limitations of uses and as uses that are PL, you can certainly look at that L, whatever it is, and as part of your deliberation and your approval, if you so choose to approve, and modify what the L is. And you've done that in the past with other uses, with other applicants, come up with conditions of approval. In this vein, you would come up with additional Ls or modify the Ls as we have suggested. So the PL not as we have suggested, but one that maybe has been revised to address your.
Following up on that, I was trying to find just a clear list of what your proposed Ls and like not the uses with Ls, but what the Ls on the uses would be in the PUs. And I see the document says draft text amendment schedule changes revised June 8th. And it shows some of it, but like, for example, I did a control F for amphitheater. And I see that it says a special permit is required for an amphitheater with more than 150 seats, but it doesn't say what the L would be.
Would it help if we put it into like a spreadsheet format?
Yeah,
Where we actually,
where we organ a different document here that I wasn't seeing.
That's fine. So we can put it in a separate document that's a spreadsheet that basically that isn't in the zoning table, the zoning use table, but actually puts all of the Ps together and all of the PLs together and all of the SPUs together and then sort of make notes on it, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, not even so much
with the limitations.
What are the, because here it says PL for amphitheater. But the only comment on amphitheater I'm seeing here is actually an SPU.
Yep. So we'll put it into a table and then we'll add the limitation, we'll add the detail into that table so that you can look at it more in blocks of permitted versus permitted with limitations or yeah.
Thank you.
I'll add just as much as I love the spreadsheet, if it could be something that presents well in a PDF, that would be much desired, as that's a lot of what we.
You got it.
So, thank you.
For sure.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, Commissioner, the text amendment language that you see, that's new language that we suggest in the overall code. So there may be uses that we suggest as PL and the L is already in the code. And we've just said, well, whatever that use is as PL, however it's already set forth in the code, that's perfectly fine with us. To make it only more confusing for you.
Would it make sense to take the limitations associated with just the ones allowed in the main RESA zone and break it out in alphabetical order? No, I don't think that's too much. Would that help?
If we're gonna take the amphitheater, here it says PL. If that's a PL that's existing, I would like to see what those existing limitations are. And
red text.
And if they're proposing some different type of L or it's not existing and the L is new.
Yeah, we
right?
could do like we would do a text amendment, red text or something.
And then they're saying special permit for over 150, but on these charts, I'm not seeing a special permit next to any amphitheaters. So I'm not sure if that means that I'm misunderstanding things or if we overlooked some things.
We'll organize it in a little bit of a different manner. So it's a lot more clear as to if the limitation is pre-existing or if we're actually proposing the limitation itself and what that proposal might be.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is more procedural, I guess, for staff, but this is early on, as Galen has said. And will we as a commission be going over each one of these uses?
That is entirely up to you.
It seems as if there's enough concern that we should consider going over each use.
I think that kind of thinking about like when we did the zoning rewrite, what we did was here's what do you have issues with or concerns with? Because some of these you may not have any issues with, like, oh, that completely fits and makes sense. But amphitheater or inn or event space, what does that actually mean? Considering the volume of space we're considering, and that's where you can put your belts and suspenders around things now. And then I think the way, in my mind, how we can structure the approval is, you can, as additional traffic data comes in, you can further refine that going forward.
I propose that between now and our July 15th meeting, that we take time as commissioners to make the list of things we do want to dive into from a use perspective, so we can have that conversation, to Galen's point, hopefully streamline it where, we start by alphabetically talking about amphitheaters and work our way down. And, you know, if there's a use that somebody has a question about or wants to discuss, we can do that ideally before the public comments. So that way we can propose ideas and talk to the applicant. And then the public also has a chance to talk about the ideas we've had and how we're thinking about that. And we can hear their feedback. Like that's how I'm thinking. It'll extend time a little bit, but I think going back to when we did the rewrite, like it'll give us the best information, not only for us, but for the public. And then I guess ultimately for us as we're making our decision. Does that sound good to you?
It sounds like a good start.
Okay.
So if I understand what you're proposing, put it in writing, put it together. It's kind of like having a work session with no work session and then giving it back to the applicant.
So I guess what I'm proposing is, you know, it'd be great for the applicant to restructure some of the materials in a way that's easier for us to digest based on the conversation we're having tonight. And then for us, before our July 15th meeting, to work through each of the uses and see if there's things that concern us or that we want to talk about and identify like what limitations do we want? Is this a use that we want to allow? And if so, what does that look like?
So are you looking to recess this meeting versus?
We'll
No, I'm asking because
we'll probably
otherwise
continue
you're
tonight.
opening back, you're opening it.
We're likely going to continue this through July and maybe into August. Like I'm not sure exact time frame.
Well, but that's for
yeah.
format, because I think the next one was scheduled to get public input, correct?
Yes,
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of getting the cart before the horse because we don't know.
So yes, but I think it's useful for us to raise the issues that we see before the public has a chance to comment, so we can hear the public's comment on the issues we've identified, if that makes sense. It also gives them the best information to make comment on that as well.
Can I make a statement?
Yeah, of course.
So I just wanted to, look, when this first came up, you know, I'm going back to your original plan. It's like somebody asked me, what do you think? And I said, what's not to like? Somebody willing to personally take on a project like that and remediate lamps and that. But sitting here now, you know, our obligation is to make sure that it's the right usage for the properties. I don't know anybody that said no, they don't like what's being proposed. There are certain aspects of what is being proposed that have impacts on neighborhoods. And that's our job, is to figure out, this is the best land use this way, which you've asked us to do. And as though get the input from the neighbors and all that, and what works for them. And that's, I don't want you to think that nobody likes this, but, and nobody, you know, so say no good deed goes unturned, you know, as they say, but I just wanted to throw out, because I know how much time and money you've put into this. And it's nice to see a homegrown kind of do that. So nothing personal here, as they say, right?
We'll be back. Like, this is the beginning of this process.
We have our job due that we're charged to by the citizens.
Absolutely. We understand, and we are respectful of the process and want to work within the process to get to the best possible outcome for everyone.
One of the questions I had on the tables was in the application that was submitted with the, I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly which document, but it references something in the temporary uses table. And I didn't see any updates on that. So just as a call out, as you guys are looking at the documents, if there's any proposed changes to that temporary uses, I thought I saw some language in there, but I didn't see an accompanying table.
I don't think we are, but we'll double check as part of this.
Appreciate that. Just that way as we're evaluating that. Are there other questions for the applicant? You have to leave?
I just have to
Okay.
consider.
Yep, understood. Thanks, Anna. Are there other questions for the applicant? Oh, sorry, Harsh, I didn't see your hand.
This might be a bit more for staff, or I'm not sure, but like as we look through the uses, especially with this site, I think just putting a lens of indoor and outdoor is going to be really important. So just being, and I'm not familiar with every line of the zoning code yet, so just being very explicit about, for example, live music, and then explaining explicitly whether, you know, live music attaches to only indoor or only outdoor, or we have to specify. Like going through the uses and kind of, you know, like contextualizing like what this would mean for both indoor and outdoor applications of the permitted uses would be good.
Okay, thank you. It will include that in how we try to organize it all.
Thank you. I would add, so I recall it was a significant part of our discussion with the phase one in the North Forest was about the construction vehicle and impacts there. So I don't know if it's possible for you guys to pull together some information or number from phases for some estimates there to help. I remember we talked about maybe barging in material, but that wasn't really an option for phase one, for example. But as you're able to share information from these phases, where you think it might go.
Yeah, Chris, we can dig back into that. Part of that falls also under what we talked about with staff this morning, is coming back with the traffic report that would actually include looking at the construction portion as well. So it's something we can do, but
Yeah, I think in the materials you propose, you've outlined, which items are adaptive reuse versus, net new construction. And you've highlighted some areas where well, from what you said, I anticipate you'll be requesting to bring in fill for some of the elevated areas and such. So it'd be helpful if you're able to, I don't want to use the word quantify, but provide some more detail around that would be useful, just for us to have a sense at this stage with the master plan.
understood.
Thank you. Those were the questions I had. Anybody else have questions for the applicant while on? Do you have anything further you'd like to add?
No, Mr. Chairman, nothing at this point. We look forward to coming back in July. We'll get you the documents, the information, and responses to questions that Mr. Hempstead, I think Mr. Schulman, certainly Commissioner Lankowski, and others may have asked. And we look forward to seeing you back on the 15th. Whatever other comments, questions, suggestions you have, you could share them with staff. Staff will share them with us, and we'll certainly respond to those as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for your presentation this evening. Sorry for the audio and visual issues, but thank you for bearing with us. With that, is there a motion to continue this application to our July 15th?
And make a quick.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Just for the public's edification. So the hearing is going to continue till July 15th. It will be in City Hall. It may be here, maybe downstairs, and maybe another room downstairs. I'm going to make sure wherever it is, the audio works beforehand, which we'll get that fixed. I anticipate the applicant will come back and provide additional information based on some comments they heard tonight. And I do anticipate more discussion around traffic based on, because the applicant received correspondence from the city yesterday, so they really didn't have a chance to dig into that. We'll have our traffic staff here, as well as our peer review outside traffic consultant that we've hired to help us through this. So I anticipate there'll be a couple hours of discussion before the public gets a chance to speak. So I apologize, you might have to sit through more conversation. And we do anticipate at least one other public session where the public will have a free reign to talk towards the end of July, and we'll continue that out if there's still ongoing conversation. And just a reminder for the commissioners that, you're in session, no outside conversation with any members of the public or amongst yourselves regarding the matter before us.
Understood. I'll just tap on a reminder that.
Is that starting today?
That started as soon as the application.
It's not technically we didn't open a public hearing.
Yes, it opened the public hearing. Yep.
Once we open the public hearing.
It's once the application is submitted, right?
Yeah, technically, once it's submitted to our office, there should be no conversation with.
Okay, I'm old school. It used to be that once they had the public hearing, a closed public hearing, you couldn't talk to anybody.
Yep.
Yeah. Once, in my mind, once the paper hits our office, there shouldn't be any conversation with between the commission members and members of the applicant team or the public.
So I see the applicant team makes sense, but I mean, I don't know why.
Yeah, because they can outside influence a member of the commission with their positions on things without everybody else having the benefit of hearing the same information.
One thing I want to highlight and build off of what Steve was saying earlier is, in addition to speaking at the public hearings that we'll have on July 15th and afterwards, you can also submit written comment to staff. Their emails are on the website, either Steve Kleppen or Brian Baker.
Yeah, and we did get a bunch of emails today. Those will all be up on the website tomorrow. They've been provided to the applicant. The state commission will get them tomorrow, and those are collected up until the hearing closes.
So, with that, is there a motion to continue this? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. We'll do this by a show of hands. All those in favor? We don't toss them online already. Okay, looks unanimous. Is there any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we are continued on this matter until July 15th. We will see you then. Thank you so much for your presentation tonight. Our next item of business is comments of the director. Okay. Are there any comments of commissioners? No?
You got a lot of.
All right. Wonderful. Our next meeting is July 1st, 2026. So we'll see you guys next week. Is there a motion to adjourn? All right, thank you, Jay. Is there a second? Thanks, guys. All right, all those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who came out tonight. I really appreciate it.